He was considered as the weakest hunter in the world, but after almost dying in a dungeon, he gains the unique ability to level up, which allows him to become the strongest. 10 years earlier, mysterious gates started appearing all over the world, releasing countless monsters, and they were immune to conventional weapons, so humanity struggled against them. But a group of humans awakened special powers, allowing them to defeat the monsters, and they became known as the Hunters. They're given rankings based on their abilities, and we learn that once their powers awaken, it's impossible for them to level up, so the only way for them to get stronger is to upgrade their equipment. We see a hunter named Kim as a man named Park approaches him, revealing that his wife is pregnant, so he needs to make money by raiding the dungeon. They notice a boy named Jinwoo approaching, and everyone greets him, as Park wonders if he's someone important. But we learn that he's only a ranky hunter, and he's considered as the weakest in the world, because he was almost killed while trying to clear the easiest dungeon. A girl named Jui approaches him, wondering what happened to his face. So he explains that he got injured while raiding a ranky dungeon, because there was no healer in their party, saying his companions were so strong that they didn't need one. Jui thinks they're selfish, but he blames himself for being weak, saying he's used to being treated as a burden. The leader Song-chi calls them for a meeting, and everyone is glad to work with him because he's known as a capable hunter. They're about to enter the gate as Kim tells Jinwoo to be careful, thinking he might get injured again. We learn that he's using a generic knife as his weapon because that's all he can afford, but he's determined to succeed, and he enters the gate. We meet the chairman Gun-yi as he reveals that hunters make profit by selling essence stones, which can be obtained by defeating monsters, and they're considered as valuable resources because they can be used to craft powerful equipment. He adds that mana crystals can also be obtained in the dungeon, and they serve the same purpose, but they're not as potent as the stones. The government plans to use the stones and crystals as a new power source because they're incredibly efficient and they don't pollute the atmosphere. We return to Jinwoo as he obtains his first essence stone, but a goblin attacks him, so he tries to fight back, but his knife shatters, and he ends up getting stabbed. Park kills the goblin, and Jui helps Jinwoo, who watches as their companions defeat the monsters. They're able to defeat the dungeon boss, and everyone celebrates, but Jui wonders why Jinwoo is still a hunter, saying she's worried about him because he always gets injured. They collect the loot, but they appear to be disappointed, thinking it's not enough, but a hunter calls everyone, showing them a tunnel as they realize that it's a double dungeon. They know that they will find more loot inside, but Song-chi reveals that they can't explore it because they need to wait for orders from the Hunters Association. But Kim suggests breaking the rules so that they can collect the loot. Song-chi thinks it's too risky, saying they should take a vote, but half of them oppose the idea, including Jui. Jinwoo is the only one that hasn't voted, and he's going to break the tie, so he realizes that his decision is going to affect the outcome. He considers that he could end up dying, but he thinks about his current situation, knowing his father is missing and his mother is in the hospital. His sister can't help him because she's still a student, so it's up to him to provide for her, knowing he needs the money to make ends meet, so he decides to enter the tunnel. Meanwhile, the officials are testing the powers of the new hunters to determine their rankings. We meet the guildmaster of the Hunters Guild Choi as he orders the officials to send offers to promising newbies because they need more hunters in the guild. We see thieves stealing a bag, and they're about to escape, but a girl gets in the way, retrieving the bag and causing them to crash. She returns it to the owner, and everyone recognizes her as the S-rank hunter Heian, but she doesn't like getting the public's attention, so she escapes from the scene. Back in the dungeon, the hunters explore the tunnel as Jui questions Jinwoo's decision, reminding him that he almost died. He knows that she saved his life, and she tells him to show his gratitude by having dinner with her, causing him to become flustered. At that moment, they see a door, thinking the boss must be inside. But as they enter it, they realize that it's filled with statues, and Jinwoo sees one of them, realizing that it's bigger than the others, as everyone wonders why there are no monsters. They see an ancient tablet, which mentions the commandments of the temple, and Song-chi reads it, revealing that it's telling them to worship and praise God, and prove their faith to him, or they won't be able to leave the room alive. But Jui notes that the huge statue appears to be watching them, and the door suddenly closes, causing everyone to panic. A hunter tries to leave, saying they shouldn't have entered the tunnel, but a statue attacks him, killing him in an instant, and everyone falls into despair, wondering how they're supposed to escape. Jinwoo thinks that the statues are too strong to be in a D-rank dungeon, and he looks at the huge statue, realizing that it's watching them. He recalls how he always has a brush with death during his raids because he can't keep up with the other hunters. But he never gave up, and he learned to compensate for his weakness by observing everything in detail. He can tell that they're in trouble, so he tells everyone to take cover as the statue fires an energy beam, destroying everything in its path. Everyone realizes that their lives are in danger, and Song-chi tells everyone not to move because it could trigger another attack. He approaches Jinwoo, wondering how he was able to sense the danger. He explains that it was just a gut feeling, but he realizes that Song-chi lost his arm, and he tells Jinwoo to help him stop the bleeding. So Jinwoo covers him with bandages, as he mentions that he was planning to ask for Jui's help. But she always freaks out when she experiences pressure, and this explains why she only joins easy raids, despite being a B-rank healer. Song-chi explains that he's been to B-rank dungeons, but he's never seen a monster as powerful as the statue, thinking it belongs to an S-rank dungeon. He recalls the commandments written on the tablet, and Jinwoo thinks that the huge statue is God. Song-chi knows that they're no match for it, so they need to find a way to escape. But a hunter mentions that he doesn't want to die, and he charges forward with ridiculous speed, but the statue attacks him, destroying him in an instant. Jinwoo realizes that it can kill them if it wanted to, wondering why it isn't attacking them. He recalls the writing on the tablet, asking Song-chi about it, so he mentions that the first commandment is to worship God. Jinwoo thinks that the dungeon has its own rules, and he stands up, as Song-chi tries to stop him, thinking he could get himself killed. But Song-chi realizes that he's determined to survive, and the statue of God prepares to attack him, but he bows his head, as he notes that it spared his life. So he tells everyone to prostrate themselves, saying it won't attack them if they keep their heads low. They follow his instructions, and the statue's eyes deactivate, but it suddenly starts smiling, so everyone becomes worried. But Park notes that it isn't doing anything, and everyone thinks they're safe. But it suddenly starts moving, walking towards them as they start to panic. Jinwoo reminds them that the second commandment is to praise God, and a man approaches the statue, claiming he knows what to do. He starts reciting a prayer, but it smiles at him as Jinwoo realizes that his plan isn't working. He gets crushed to death, and everyone starts running away as it chases after them. Park thinks about his family, knowing they're waiting for him to return, but he approaches a statue, and it starts moving, slicing him in half. Jinwoo thinks about the second commandment, realizing that the statues with weapons are killing his companions, and he sees statues with instruments, thinking they need to be activated, so he tells everyone to approach them. They follow his instructions, and the statues start playing the instruments, causing them to feel relieved, because their lives have been spared. Jinwoo approaches a statue with Jui, but it doesn't activate, and he realizes that it won't work if there are two people close to it. So he tells Jui to stay there, and he runs to activate the last one, but the statue of God starts pursuing him. It's about to crush him to death, and he manages to avoid it, but he gets blown away, activating another statue by accident. It attacks him, smashing the ground, and Jui thinks he's dead, but we see him crawling to the last one, refusing to give up, as the statue of God continues to pursue him. It stomps on him, but the last statue starts singing, and we see that he was able to activate it. So the statue of God spares him, returning to its throne as he realizes that they have completed the second commandment. Jui approaches him, but she realizes that he lost his leg, so she tries to heal him, but she ends up reaching her limit. Everyone realizes that their companions are dead, and Kim blames Song-chi for everything because he's the leader of the group. Their companions think Kim is being unfair because he suggested breaking the rules, and they start blaming each other. But Song-chi takes responsibility because he was the one who made the final call. An altar suddenly appears, as Jinwoo explains that the third commandment is to prove their faith to God, thinking they need to perform a human sacrifice to survive. Kim tells Song-chi to offer his life because he's the leader of the group, and he agrees to this, so he approaches the altar. But a fire suddenly appears, so everyone becomes confused, and Jinwoo tells them to help him reach the altar because he wants to examine it. As they approach it, more flames appear, and Jinwoo wonders if anyone will arrive to rescue them. But Song-chi explains that the gate is about to fully open, so nobody will be able to save them. We learn that a gate remains inactive for 7 days after it appears, but after that period, monsters will be able to enter the world in what's known as a dungeon break. So hunters are sent into the gate to prevent it from happening by defeating the dungeon boss, and Jinwoo realizes that if they fail, the statue of God will be able to enter their world, so they need to clear the dungeon at all costs. He advises everyone to approach the altar, and more flames appear as the altar activates, causing a ring of blue flames to surround it. The door opens, as everyone wonders if they can leave, but the statues start moving as a blue flame disappears. Everyone panics, but Jinwoo notes that the statues stop when he looks at them, and he tells everyone to keep their eyes open so that the statues won't be able to move. It appears to be working, but one of them panics, and she starts running away, causing a red flame to disappear. She manages to leave the room, and everyone wonders what's happening, because the commandment is to prove their faith. Jinwoo thinks it's a trap, but another one runs away, so he warns the others that they will have blind spots if more people leave. He thinks the blue flames serve as the timer, and the goal is to survive until they disappear, but Kim knows he isn't sure, because he has no evidence to support his theory. Kim thanks him for helping them survive, but he mentions that he has a family waiting for him, and he decides to run away. Jinwoo realizes that they can't stop all of the statues, and Song-chi tells Jui to escape with Jinwoo, but her legs stop moving because she has already spent all of her energy. So Jinwoo tells Song-chi to escape with her, saying he won't be able to run away because he only has one leg, and he gives her an essence stone, telling her to use it to buy dinner. She doesn't want to leave him, but Song-chi knocks her out and carries her away. Jinwoo is the only one left, knowing he doesn't stand a chance, but he takes a sword, planning to fight until his last breath. But the statues attack him, blowing him away, and he ends up losing an arm. He endures a brutal beatdown, and he lands on the altar as a statue prepares to strike him down. He notes that he doesn't want to die, so he starts crying, but the timer expires as he receives a system message asking him if he wants to become a player. He wakes up in a hospital, realizing that his body has been completely healed. He wonders if it was just a dream, but the manager of the Hunters Association surveillance team, Jinchul, enters his room. Jinchul explains that he was unconscious for the past 3 days, and he wonders what happened to Jui and Song-chi. Jinchul reveals that they survived, but Song-chi lost his arm, so he might be forced to retire as a hunter, and Jui is suffering from trauma, so she needs psychiatric care before she can join another raid. He reveals that the White Tiger Guild rushed to the dungeon because they were alerted by the survivors, but they never saw the statues, and Jinwoo was found lying on the ground. Everyone finds this strange, but they believe that the survivors are telling the truth because the remains of the other hunters were found on the scene. Jinchul thinks that an E-rank hunter could never survive the incident, so he believes that Jinwoo unlocked a new level of power through his second awakening. He pulls out a gadget, explaining that it will measure Jinwoo's magic, and he becomes excited, thinking he has become stronger. But as he touches it, we see that his score is 10, which is considered abysmal, because even the weakest hunters get a score of 70. So Jinchul explains that they were mistaken, and they leave the room, thinking he's as weak as a civilian. Jinwoo is disappointed with the result, but he wonders why they didn't inquire about the screen, because he can see it floating in his room. He wonders if he's the only one who can see it, and at that moment, his sister Gina arrives, revealing that she was worried about him. She tells him that she will quit school and get a job so that he can stop being a hunter because he always ends up in the hospital. He apologizes for making her worried, and he inquires about the screen, but she becomes confused because she can't see it. He asks her how she checks her messages in video games, and she tells him that he just needs to open the message box. So he mentions the message box, and the system recognizes his command, informing him that he has a daily quest. He thinks about how he has become a player, and Gina decides to let him rest as he reads his notifications, realizing that the system is designed to assist him, but he will receive a penalty if he fails to comply. He accepts the daily quest, and the system gives him a simple workout routine, warning him that he will receive a penalty if he fails. But Jinwoo thinks it's impossible to complete it because he's still in the hospital, so he decides to take a nap. Meanwhile, Jinchul reports to Gunyi, informing him that Jinwoo didn't undergo a second awakening. Gunyi mentions that the case is full of mysteries, thinking there's still much they need to learn about dungeons, so they decide to label it as a special case, which will require further evaluation. Choi orders Haein to become the instructor in a B rank raid, saying it will serve as practical training for the new recruits. She thinks she isn't fit for the role, but he tells her that she just needs to fight, and everyone will learn from her example. Choi reveals that the Hunters Guild is one of the largest in the country, but they're nothing compared to the best guilds in the world. He knows that a hunter's rank can't be changed, but he thinks they can improve by working on their combat abilities. Jinwoo is sleeping on his bed, but the timer for the quest expires, and the system informs him that he has failed his quest. So the ground starts shaking, causing him to wake up, and he finds himself in the middle of the desert, wondering if he's dreaming. But he encounters a giant centipede, as the system tells him to survive for 4 hours, so he panics and he starts running away as the monster chases after him. But more centipedes appear, and he eventually becomes exhausted. He's about to get eaten, but the timer expires, so he returns to the hospital as the system informs him that he has completed the penalty quest. But he ends up collapsing, and the nurses enter his room, wondering what happened to him. We cut to Jui, as she's invited to join a D rank raid, but she declines because she still hasn't recovered. She learns that Jinwoo is in the hospital, so she decides to visit him, but she hears the nurses complaining about his behavior, thinking he's insane because he just recovered, but he never stops training. Jinwoo takes a break, and we learn that every time he completes a daily quest, his body fully recovers, and he gains ability points, which he can use to increase his stats. We learn that he has an inventory screen, and he can learn skills, but he thinks his situation is weird, because he feels like he's playing a video game. He returns to his room, where he reveals that he gets a random loot box when he completes a daily quest. He opens it, causing a key to appear, as the system mentions that he can use it to access an instance dungeon in a subway. He becomes confused, because he doesn't know what an instance dungeon is, but he thinks the key will lead him to an event, which can help him get stronger. Jinwoo visits his mother in the hospital, and in a flashback from 4 years ago, his mother suddenly collapses, so they take her to the doctor. He explains that she's suffering from a rare condition known as the eternal sleep disease, which came into existence when the gates appeared. It's caused by continual exposure to mana, but it's incurable, so they decide to put her on life support. Jinwoo needs money to make ends meet, so he starts working at a construction site, but he suddenly awakens his powers, and he becomes qualified to work as a hunter. He becomes excited, knowing his life is about to change, but he realizes that he's so weak that he can't even defeat a goblin, and the other hunters look down on him, seeing him as a burden. Back in the present, Jinwoo continues his training, and he increases his strength. He heads to the subway, and he takes his key, using it to unlock the instance dungeon. He decides to enter it, thinking he can run away if it gets too dangerous, but the exit suddenly closes, as the system informs him that the only way to escape the dungeon is to defeat the boss, or use a teleportation stone. But he realizes he's in trouble, because he isn't sure if he can survive on his own. Jinwoo decides to explore the dungeon, and 3 goblins suddenly appear. He struggles to keep up with their movements, and he falls to the ground, as a goblin tries to stab him, but he dodges, and he launches a counterattack, killing the goblin in 1 hit. The others continue to attack him, but he easily defeats them, as he notes that he has become stronger. But a wolf suddenly appears, and it charges at him, shattering his knife. He realizes that it's stronger than the goblins, and his legs start trembling as he realizes that he's afraid. The wolf charges in, and it manages to scratch him, as he notes that he has no healer, so he's going to die if he suffers a fatal injury. He evades the wolf's attacks, as he notices that his body feels lighter than usual, and he manages to overcome his fear. He punches with all his might, knocking the wolf down, and he realizes that he was able to hurt it, because he focused on improving his strength. But the wolf recovers, and it lunges at him, so he tries to stop it with his fists, but he realizes that his attacks are working. So he starts running away, thinking he doesn't stand a chance, because he has no weapon. But at that moment, he recalls that he saw something in his inventory, so he opens it, and he takes a magic sword, as the wolf lunges at him, but he attacks it, slicing it in half. He wonders why he has the sword in his inventory, because he knows that it belongs to Kim, and it's too expensive for him to afford. But he decides not to think about it, and he notes that his wounds have healed. But 2 more wolves appear, as he realizes that his sword is stuck in the ground. So Jinwoo starts to panic, but as the wolves approach him, he manages to lift it, and he takes a swing, but the wolf is able to catch it. So he kicks it, causing it to weaken its grip, and he slices its head off. Seeing this, the other wolf decides to retreat, and as he rests, he realizes that he has reached level 2. He notes that he never leveled up by completing quests, so he realizes that actual combat allows him to gain experience. He notices that all of his stats have increased, thinking it's more efficient to get stronger by leveling up, because he acquires 5 points with each level, while the daily quests only give him 3 points. But Jinwoo realizes that he just defeated 5 monsters, thinking he shouldn't get carried away, and he checks for magic gems, but he finds an item instead. The system tells him that he found a shop, and he tries to buy something, but he realizes that he can't, because his level is too low. He decides to sell the item, allowing him to earn 20 gold, but he wonders how much it's worth in cash, thinking it isn't much, because he appears to be in an E-rank dungeon. He wonders how he can clear the dungeon, because he doesn't know where to find the teleportation stone, and he thinks he isn't strong enough to defeat the boss. But he thinks he might stand a chance if he continues to level up, and he encounters a pack of wolves, but he isn't afraid of them. He charges in, swinging his blade, and killing them as they approach him. He ends up getting surrounded, but he isn't bothered, and he slaughters all of them, allowing him to level up. Jinwoo realizes that his sword is about to break, but he knows that weapons are expendable, and he's glad that the fight is over. He checks his inventory, and he realizes that he has already acquired the teleportation stone. But he decides to stay in the dungeon, because he wants to defeat the monsters to get stronger, thinking they will disappear if he teleports away. Jinwoo heads deeper into the dungeon, slaughtering the monsters along the way, as he notes that his battles are becoming easier. We learn that he can assess a monster's level by looking at the color of its name. The monsters with white names are weaker than him, while the ones with red names are stronger. He knows he's making progress, because the wolves used to have a red name, but now it's white. He senses the presence of the boss, and he isn't sure if he can defeat it, but he decides to fight it anyways. He reaches a swamp, and he sees a creature charging at him with incredible speed. He tries to block, but he gets knocked back, and he realizes that his sword is broken. A huge serpent appears, as Jinwoo notes that its name is Orange, so it has the same level as him, and he realizes that its body is covered in scales, so his sword is useless against it. It tries to attack him, and he manages to dodge, but he wonders how he can defeat it. It starts pursuing him, and he struggles to avoid its attacks, but it hits him with its tail, blowing him away. A train is about to crash into him, so he dashes away, and he barely manages to avoid it. He thinks he still isn't strong enough, wondering how hard he has to work to escape his life of constant ridicule. He continues to struggle against the serpent, as he recalls that he's considered as the weakest hunter in the world, thinking the weak are always powerless against the strong, so he's determined to become stronger. He charges at the serpent, evading its attack, and plunging his sword into its scales. It tries to attack him, but he avoids it, and he leaps into the air, as the serpent tries to eat him. But he suddenly disappears, and the serpent realizes that he's clinging to its body. Jinwoo uses his strength to crush its scales, and it appears to be in pain, so it smashes him against a pillar. But he doesn't let go, and he presses down on the serpent's neck with all his might, causing it to bleed, as he continues to tighten his grip. The serpent runs out of blood, and it crashes to the ground, as the system informs Jinwoo that he has defeated the boss. He receives a powerful dagger as a reward, along with a vial of the serpent's venom, thinking its effects are terrifying, because it permanently reduces strength to increase defense. With the boss defeated, the dungeon returns to its original state, and Jinwoo leaves the subway, wondering where everyone went, as a soldier approaches him, telling him that civilians aren't allowed in the area. But the soldier sees him carrying a sword, realizing he's a hunter, so he apologizes for being rude, saying he will escort him to the area. Jinwoo notes that the city is in ruins, and the soldier tells him that there was a dungeon break, but all of the monsters have been dealt with, except for the boss. He senses a powerful presence, and we see a huge golem fighting a group of hunters, as the civilians watch them from a distance. The hunters struggle against the golem because its defense is ridiculous, so even their most powerful attacks are working. Jinwoo arrives, and he notes that they're weak because most of them are only E-ranked. He realizes that Jui is with them, and she tries to cast a spell, but she recalls what happened in the dungeon, so she loses her composure. Jinwoo realizes that she still hasn't gotten over the trauma, and he decides to help them, knowing they're fighting against a D-rank boss, which is weaker than the one he just defeated. The hunters are about to get overwhelmed, but Jinwoo launches his sword with incredible strength, and it hits the golem, creating an opening for the other hunters, who use the opportunity to take it out. One of them wonders how they were able to defeat it, because their attacks weren't working, and he sees the sword on the ground, so he inquires about it. A soldier points to Jinwoo, but he's nowhere to be found, and we see that he has already left the scene, because he wasn't expecting his attack to have such an impact. Back in the hospital, Jinwoo continues his workout routine, and a nurse enters his room, but she's surprised to see that he's already ripped, wondering how he was able to achieve it in just a few days. She informs him that he's going to get discharged, but as he's about to leave his room, she asks for his number, because she can't resist his charm. We meet the S-rank hunter Beck, who is invited as a special guest in a TV show. The interviewer asks him about his daily routine, so he tells her that he's always training, because he doesn't want his combat skills to get rusty. He reveals that he used to work as a firefighter, so he knows how to respond to dangerous situations. Gina is watching the interview, but she realizes that she's already late, and Jinwoo tells her to be careful on her way to school. She notices he looks different, thinking it must be because of his training, and she's about to leave for school, but he gives her an umbrella, telling her to stay safe. After she leaves, he checks his daily quest, as he notes that he gained muscle mass, thinking it must be because his stats increased. He notes that he still hasn't distributed his ability points, thinking he needs more than just strength to defeat powerful monsters, so he decides to use them to improve his agility and perception. At that moment, he receives a call from the landlord, who tells him that his rent is due, so he promises to pay immediately. He knows that he has become stronger, so he thinks he'll be able to earn more money by raiding dungeons, but he notes that it's difficult to find a good job, because his rank is still at E. He thinks about undergoing a reevaluation, thinking it will allow him to raise his rank and earn more money. But it would attract too much attention, knowing his case is unusual, so he ultimately decides against it. He's surprised when he sees a high-paying job for rank E hunters, so he rushes over to the location and completes his daily quest along the way. He meets a hunter named Donsuk, who explains that his party only has 6 members, and they need 8 people to enter the C-rank dungeon, so they're hiring hunters to fill the slots. But he mentions that Jinwoo won't share the spoils, because he won't be fighting the monsters, but they will pay him a large commission for joining them. Jinwoo accepts the job, and Donsuk orders him to carry their luggage, but he wonders why the party has no healer, so Donsuk tells him that they're already used to fighting without one. He finds this strange, and he reads the contract, realizing that they won't be liable for anything that happens to him in the dungeon, but he signs it anyways. A D-ranked hunter named Yujin approaches him, revealing that he also accepted the job, and everyone is impressed with his equipment, thinking he must be from a rich family. They prepare to enter the gate, as everyone notes that it looks enormous, but Jinwoo explains that the size of the gate doesn't matter, and the Hunters Association classifies it based on the amount of magic power it exudes. They enter the gate, and they realize that the dungeon is too dark, so the mage Kyuwon lightens up the area, allowing them to see what's inside. But Jinwoo notes that it reminds him of the temple because it's pitch black and there are no monsters blocking their path. As they head deeper into the dungeon, they hear monsters approaching, so everyone prepares for battle. But they're surrounded by openings, so they panic, wondering where the monsters will come from. But Jinwoo observes his surroundings, and he warns them that the ants will attack from above. So they're able to respond on time, and they start fighting the ants, as Jinwoo notes that they're used to working together. He observes that Yujin lacks strength, but his equipment allows him to make up for it, and he's glad that everyone is doing well, but he admits that he's frustrated, because the job is too easy. They're able to defeat the ants, and they start searching for magic gems, as Donsuk wonders how Jinwoo was able to predict where the ants would come from. He mentions that it was just a gut feeling, and Kyuwon notes that the ants have bite marks, thinking they were attacked by a powerful monster. Jin is happy that he was able to kill a monster, revealing that this is his first mission, so his father bought him expensive gear, but Jinwoo warns him to be cautious because he can sense that something's wrong. At the White Tiger Guild, we see the hunters in the gym when they notice an explosion, but they maintain their composure because it happens all the time, knowing their guildmaster is just training. We see that Beck blew a massive hole into a boulder, but he mentions that it isn't even a warm-up, ordering his subordinates to clean it up. We return to the dungeon as Jinwoo continues to carry the luggage for the group, but he thinks that Donsuk's party is suspicious because they have no healer despite their excellent teamwork. They see injured ants along the way, thinking the boss should be nearby, and as they proceed deeper into the dungeon, they reach an area surrounded by mana crystals, thinking they're going to be rich. Jin reads Jinwoo's contract, and he explains that the crystals don't count as spoils, so Jinwoo must receive a portion of it. Donsuk agrees with him, but he reveals that the boss is guarding the crystals, and they know that the dungeon will close after it's defeated. So he suggests mining the crystals before they deal with it, knowing it's still sleeping, but Donsuk explains that they left their mining tools, so they need to leave the dungeon to get it. They leave Jin and Jinwoo inside, and Donsuk orders Kwon to block the path, so he uses his magic, causing an explosion which seals the entrance. Jinwoo realizes that they have been betrayed, as he recalls that Song-chi warned him that the crime rate for dungeon raids is high, because there's no way to tell if a hunter has been murdered in the dungeon. Jin blames himself for talking about the contract, but Jinwoo knows that Donsuk's party was planning to kill them from the very beginning. The spider approaches them, and Jin promises to protect Jinwoo, who notes that the spider is stronger than the bosses he defeated so far. He believes that he's no match for it, but he recalls his encounter with the statue of God, knowing the spider is nothing compared to it. So he tells Jin to stand back, as he prepares to fight the boss. Donsuk's companion wonders why they're using the spider to eliminate Jinwoo and Jin, so he explains that he didn't want to risk waking it up. He thinks that it will go to sleep after it eats them, and he reveals that there's a small path above the cave, planning to use it to return, as he mentions that Jinwoo and Jin are as good as dead. Jin thinks that Jinwoo doesn't stand a chance, because he's just an E-rank hunter, but he refuses to back down, thinking he's strong enough to defeat it. He charges in, attacking with ridiculous speed, and Jin is surprised to see this. But we cut to Gun-yi, as he tells Jinchul that he's exhausted because of his meetings. So Jinchul invites him to a sparring match, thinking it will help him unwind. He accepts it, saying he's out of his prime, but as they start training, Jinchul struggles to hit him, and he counters with a devastating blow, allowing him to win the match. Jinchul thanks Gun-yi for his guidance, saying he's amazing, because he's incredibly strong for his age. He tells Jinchul that his moves have improved, advising him not to neglect his training, because it will help him survive dangerous situations. We return to Jinwoo, as he tries to cut the spider's legs, but he realizes that its armor is too tough, and he notes that its attacks are deadly, thinking it could kill him in one hit. He struggles against it, as Jin wonders how he can move so fast, thinking he must have intentionally lowered his ranking by controlling his magic. But Jin becomes afraid, because few hunters are capable of doing this, and they're usually psychopaths who take pleasure in killing. Jinwoo realizes that his fatigue is increasing, knowing it will cause his movements to slow down, so he thinks about using his dagger's special abilities to end the fight. He sees the spider's head, thinking it's the weak spot, so he charges in, but the spider spits acid, forcing him to retreat. He knows that he needs to close the distance, so he uses his dash skill, allowing him to move even faster. He attacks the spider's head, and it has no effect, but he refuses to give up. So he continues his assault, but his fatigue accumulates, causing him to slow down, and he crashes to the ground. The spider is about to strike the finishing blow, but he uses his full recovery, allowing him to dodge it, and he launches a surprise attack, stabbing the spider's eye. The dagger's ability activates, paralyzing the spider and draining its health, as Jinwoo continues his relentless assault. It crashes to the ground, and the system mentions that the boss has been defeated, but Jin can't believe his eyes, thinking he was right about Jinwoo. So he tells Jinwoo to relax, as he mines the crystals, but at that moment, Donsuk's party arrives, realizing that the boss has been defeated. They think Jin was the one who killed it, and Dan-suk tells him to eliminate Jin-woo, saying they will spare his life if he obeys them. But he refuses, preparing to fight them, so they start approaching him, and at that moment, Jin-woo receives an urgent quest, telling him to eliminate them. He's surprised to see this, realizing that the system is telling him to kill people, but Kwon suddenly attacks him, blowing him away. We meet the hunter Hegan, as she starts talking with her friends, asking them how they're doing. Her friend reveals she entered an A-rank dungeon to train, but it was cleared in an instant, because Haein easily defeated the monsters. The girl thinks they are lucky to be in the large guilds, and she mentions a rumor, saying there are teams with an abnormally high casualty rate. We return to the dungeon, as everyone thinks that Jin-woo is dead, but we see that he's still alive, and he recalls that he lives in a world where only the strong survive, wondering how he forgot about this. He's about to lose consciousness, but he realizes that the system wants him to survive, so it's telling him to fight for his life. He gets back up, surprising everyone, as he realizes that he has to be strong, because the weak people will have everything taken from them. They call him the weakest hunter in the world, but he asks them if they're ready to face the consequences, as he unleashes an ominous aura. Dan-suk's companion approaches him, reminding him that he's just an A-rank hunter, but he suddenly kills the man, slicing his head off. Everyone is surprised to see this, wondering when he pulled out his weapon, and he notes that he just murdered someone, but he knows that he did it to save his own life. Dan-suk's party attacks him, but he manages to defend himself, slaughtering them as they try to kill him. Kwon tries to blast him, but he suddenly disappears, and lands a counterattack, taking him out in an instant. Dan-suk freaks out, realizing that Jin-woo was hiding his true powers, but he mentions that he's stronger than his companions, as he uses his skill to strengthen his body. He believes that Jin-woo relies on his speed, and he's using his dagger to deal damage, but he knows that it won't work against him because his body is as hard as steel. He charges in, trying to avenge his companions, but Jin-woo smashes him against the ground as he realizes that he doesn't stand a chance. So he starts begging for his life, telling Jin-woo that he can have the crystals, but he mentions that Dan-suk tried to kill him 3 times, reminding him that no one will know what happens in the dungeon. Jin-woo slices his head off, allowing him to complete the urgent quest, but the dungeon starts collapsing as the gate is about to close. They're able to escape in time, and they report that Dan-suk's party was killed during the raid. Jin-woo realizes that he received a reward for completing the urgent quest, and he acquires a skill called Murderous Intent, which weakens the enemies by causing them to panic. The official believes them, and she judges them based on their equipment, thinking Yu-jin was the one who defeated the boss, while Jin-woo did nothing to help, but Yu-jin thanks him for saving his life. Jin-chul receives a report about the incident, but finds it suspicious when he hears that Jin-woo was involved, and as he looks at the file, he recognizes Dan-suk, because he's the brother of a famous hunter. Jin-woo returns home, and Gina is happy to see he bought food. She asks him how his raid went, but he thinks back to how he didn't even hesitate when he killed the hunters. He wonders if there's something wrong with him, but his sister snaps him out of it. He decides not to worry about it, thinking he needs to prioritize getting stronger to protect his family. As he drinks his beer, he gets a notification of a debuff, but it seems to get cleansed. He keeps drinking in his room, but realizes he can't get drunk, and sees that one of his quest rewards gives him regeneration and immunity to status effects. He gets a call from Yu-jin, and they meet up at a cafe. Yu-jin sees him as his boss, and says he's putting together a team, but Jin-woo instantly turns him down. Jin-woo prepares to leave, but Yu-jin begs him to listen. He explains he's trying to become licensed as a guild master, but it requires 20 raids worth of experience. His father owns one of the country's biggest construction companies, and they are looking to form a guild. Jin-woo thinks about all the treasures that can be found in dungeons, so he isn't surprised with their plan. Yu-jin mentions his father wants an S-rank hunter to be the guild master, with his brother as second in command. Jin-woo notes that there are only 7 S-rank hunters in the whole country, and all of them are already in guilds besides one named Min, who's currently retired. Jin-woo realizes they plan to poach one from another guild, but he warns that it's a bad idea. Yu-jin reveals his brother can't be the guild master because he didn't awaken as a hunter, so it's his chance to take his place. Yu-jin points out how they can help each other. Jin-woo can participate in raids while hiding his power, while Yu Jin can convince his father of his success if he only has help from an E-rank hunter. He shows Jinwoo the building they plan to use as the guild's headquarters, valuing it at around $20 million, and he offers it in exchange for his help on 19 more raids. Jinwoo considers the offer, but thinks that since he's the only person that can level up, he will eventually reach S rank, so 20 million would be nothing when that time comes, and he ends up turning down the offer. Meanwhile in America, we meet Don-suk's brother Don-soo, and he hears the news about his brother. He knows his brother was murdered. Looking at the information on the two survivors, he plans to fly back to Korea to find them, but his assistant tells him his schedule is full, so he agrees to wait, hoping the two will survive until he has time for them. Jinwoo goes running with his sister, and he wonders what she would do if she had $20 million, but she finds it unrealistic. As Jinwoo goes to complete his daily quest, he realizes that the counter can go beyond his requirement. He decides to test the limit, and realizes he can do double the requirement. It turns into a secret quest, and he gets the option to receive a blessed loot box. It turns into another key, which seems to lead to the demon's castle, with a difficulty rank of S. He's shocked when he sees that it contains the ingredients for the elixir of life, and he thinks he can use it to save his mother. He opens the dungeon, revealing a flaming portal, wondering if he can really take on an S-rank dungeon, but we see he saved a teleportation stone just in case. As he approaches the entrance, he's confronted by a Cerberus, but he's determined to get stronger. He uses his dash to approach the beast, and he starts slashing at it, but it barely does any damage. He uses his murderous intent skill, but it has no effect. His arm gets bitten, and he loses a third of his HP. He manages to get back up, but the Cerberus uses a skill that doubles its stats. Jinwoo is unable to react, and he takes another hit. He gets smashed continuously, and we see his health is getting low. He prepares to use his teleportation stone, but the Cerberus attacks again, causing him to drop it. He wonders how he can survive, and he decides to try the snake's poison, remembering how he has debuff immunity, so he's able to get rid of the negative effect. The Cerberus lunges at him, taking another bite out of him, but he survives, and sees that the Cerberus's skill has ended. He rushes at it, and he's finally able to do some damage. The beast bites down on him, but he barely survives, and he stabs the dog's eye. He stabs it repeatedly, and he manages to kill the beast. He levels up after the fight, allowing him to heal, and he's glad that it's over. He receives another key to unlock the demon's castle, as well as the formula for the elixir of life, which requires 3 items from within the castle. Jinwoo realizes he needs to get stronger before he takes it on, but he swears to be back for it soon. He meets up with Yu Jin, saying he has changed his mind, so he's going to be joining the raids, under the condition that they will enter the dungeons alone. Yu Jin is surprised to hear this, reminding him that they need 8 members to enter the C-rank dungeons, but he explains that they can just hire people to meet the quota. Yu Jin thinks it's too risky, but Jinwoo tells him that they will be able to clear dungeons without casualties, and his father will be impressed to learn about this. He realizes that Jinwoo has a point, so he decides to look for members to join them. We see Haein in the middle of her training session, and while she rests, she's approached by a man who invites her to be the guild master of Yu Jin's guild. Yu Jin's father Han tells him that the world has changed since the dungeons appeared, saying it can no longer maintain its infrastructure without the resources from the dungeons. Han knows that the world is relying on hunters because they're the only ones who can gather the resources, and they're controlled by the association, which is owned by the state. But he reveals that the guilds are the ones making a fortune, since they're earning profits as the hunters gather resources. He mentions that the top guilds in the country are extremely wealthy, so he wants to establish his own guild, thinking it will benefit everyone. We return to Jinwoo, as he completes his daily quest, realizing that he can no longer go beyond his requirement, so he can't get another blessed loot box. He wants to receive an item which will help him get stronger, and he opens a regular loot box, but he receives a bingo card, thinking it's useless. He realizes that completing daily quests is inefficient, so he wants to fight monsters to become stronger. He thinks about defeating the centipede at the penalty zone, thinking it will help him level up, but he isn't sure if it will give him any XP. At that moment, he realizes that the association is looking for hunters to clear a D-rank dungeon, and he decides to join, thinking it's better than relying on daily quests to increase his stats. But he becomes frustrated, realizing that his progress has slowed down. We cut to a dojo, where we see Song-Chi training his student. He receives an emergency summon from the Hunters Association, and his student wonders if he's going to retire as a hunter since he already lost his arm, but he explains that he wants to do his best to contribute to society. We see Kim with his family, and he also receives the emergency summon, but his wife wants him to quit being a hunter, reminding him that he almost died during the last raid. But he explains that he needs to make ends meet, telling her that he's going to be okay. At the Hunters Guild, Choi talks to Beck, who appears to be upset because Choi arranged the interview for him at the association. He thinks it was a waste of time, telling Choi that he should have attended it instead, but he explains that he isn't qualified because he isn't as likable. He tells Beck that Han is preparing to launch his own guild, but Beck reveals that he already knows about this, asking Choi why he wanted to see him. Jui receives a call from her mother, who reveals that she's worried about her because she appears to be having issues, asking her to quit being a hunter. But she becomes upset, telling her mother to stop running her life, and she ends the call. She starts questioning her capabilities, but she wants to keep on trying, and as she leaves her room, we see that she has received the emergency summon. Haein approaches Choi, and she tells him that she was invited to be the guild master of Yujin's guild, but she reveals that she turned them down, and he's happy to hear this. She tells him that she saw Beck on her way to the office, wondering what he's doing there. We learn that Choi told Beck about Jeju Island, revealing that it has been sealed off after their raid failed, and everyone's trying to forget about it. Beck thinks it doesn't matter, but Choi becomes upset, saying he'll never forget what happened on the island. He wants to clear it, asking Beck to help him gather allies, as he wonders if Beck also lost something during their raid. Beck recalls that they ended up getting overwhelmed, leading to the death of his friends, and he continues to think about them to this day. We see Song-Chi walking around the city as he thinks about his magical powers, thinking it doesn't fit him since he's a swordsman. Along the way, he encounters Jinwoo, realizing that his leg has been healed, so Song-Chi wonders what happened to him. He explains that his leg was already healed when he woke up, so Song-Chi thinks that a high-ranked healer took care of it. He's happy to see Jinwoo, but he realizes that Song-Chi never got his arm back, so he becomes sad, but Song-Chi tells him it's okay, and they realize that they're going to be working together. They make their way to the portal, where they see Jui and Kim with another man, who joined them during their last raid. Jui is happy to see them, but the men fall silent, because they're ashamed of what they did, knowing they sacrificed Jinwoo to save themselves. Jui realizes that Jinwoo looks different, and she's glad that he was able to recover. But at that moment, a van arrives, and 3 convicts join them, as the official reveals that they were sent by the association to clear the dungeon, because there aren't enough hunters in the area. She assures everyone that they won't cause trouble, because the B-rank hunter Kang will be watching over them, thinking he should be able to dispose of them if they don't cooperate. Jinwoo finds them suspicious, telling Jui not to participate in the raid, but she tells him that she's joining because she wants to stay with him. Kang removes the convicts' restraints, but he warns them that he will kill them if they act up. He wonders who's going to be acting as the raid leader, and Jinwoo tells Song-Chi to take the role. He thanks Jinwoo for trusting him, blaming himself for what happened in the temple, as he mentions that they were only able to survive because of Jinwoo. So he thanks Jinwoo for saving their lives, and they head into the portal, ready to face what lies ahead. They're attacked by goblins, but the convicts are easily able to deal with them, and Song-Chi wonders if they are the real monsters. Jinwoo also easily takes out the goblins, and Jui notes how she hasn't even needed to heal him. They continue exploring the dungeon, and come to a fork in the road. Kang suggests they should split up, and he decides to take the convicts down one of the paths, but tells them to regroup if they find the boss room. However, thanks to Jinwoo's perception, he's able to tell which path leads to the boss. He thinks that the goblins aren't enough XP for him, so he tells Song-Chi to take the left path. Kim and the other man take the middle, and they split up, but Jinwoo notices Kang watching him. Kim takes out a goblin, and he's glad they're pretty weak. The other man hopes things go smoothly, but Kim thinks it can't be that bad since they let the weakest hunter on the mission, so the dungeon must be low level. But the man reminds him that Jinwoo was also in the last dungeon. Kim feels bad remembering how they abandoned him, and he decides to apologize to Jinwoo after this mission. Meanwhile, with the convicts, they get bored since the goblins are no challenge. In a flashback, we see Kang talking to a man who complains about the 3 men who abused his daughter, and she ended up taking her own life. But hunters are able to get reduced sentences by participating in dungeon raids. He thinks it's not fair, so he offers Kang money to kill them in the dungeon, saying that no one outside will know what happened. Back in the present, Kang tells the men he plans to report that they died to a horde of goblins. He easily takes them down, and he prepares to torture them, but Kim suddenly walks in on him. Meanwhile, Jinwoo remembers how he met Kang at the hospital, hoping he doesn't recognize him. But he suddenly hears a scream, so they rush back and find the bodies of the convicts. Kim's companion is down, and Kim is also in terrible condition. Jui quickly goes to heal him, and Song-chi can tell he was attacked with a blade. Kim thinks he can't be saved, but Jinwoo reminds him about his family, wanting him to survive so he can hold his grudge against him. Kim wishes he could apologize under better circumstances, but says he's sorry as he fades away. Kang watches them from above, preparing to attack, but Jinwoo catches his arm. Kang is impressed, but Song-chi wonders why someone from the association would do something like this. Song-chi prepares to take him on, thinking Jinwoo isn't strong enough, and he gets Jui to buff him. Even though Kang is higher ranked than him, he thinks assassins usually have low defense. Kang laughs at him for being a mage that uses a sword, but acknowledges that he has some skill. However, Song-chi takes a hit, but Jui instantly heals him, and Kang is annoyed by her, thinking he needs to take her out first. He rushes at her, but Song-chi stops him, saying he won't lose in terms of swordsmanship, but Kang's speed is too much, and he gets cut from all sides. Jui tries to heal him, but she's out of power, and Kang thinks it's over, but Song-chi suddenly uses his fire to blast him. Kang manages to avoid it, and commends him on his plan of using the sword as a distraction. He prepares to finish him off, but Jinwoo suddenly pushes him back. Kang wonders who he is, so he introduces himself as just an E-rank hunter. But Kang doesn't believe him, since he was able to stop 2 of his attacks, and he realizes that Jinwoo must have had a second awakening. Song-chi thinks it must have been the double dungeon, and Kang finally remembers who Jinwoo is, but he still thinks he has the upper hand since he has more experience. Jinwoo wonders why he did all of this, so he explains how the father asked him to kill the men, saying he's carrying out justice, but Jinwoo wonders about Kim, since he was tortured instead of being silenced, so Jinwoo thinks he's lying about wanting justice. He starts fighting with Jinwoo, and Song-chi can't believe how fast they're moving. Their speed seems to be equal, but Kang still thinks his experience gives him the edge. He kicks dirt into Jinwoo's eyes, landing multiple slashes, but Jinwoo's system activates, giving him a quest to defeat Kang. He gathers his power, and he suddenly gets even faster. Kang is hit by his dagger's poison, but Kang decides to use his own skill as he suddenly vanishes. Jinwoo tries to find him, but Kang notes that his stealth skill completely conceals him. Jinwoo tries to defend himself, but he gets cut in the leg, and Kang mentions that no one has ever seen his skill and lived to tell the tale. He thinks he's faster now that he cut Jinwoo's leg, but Jinwoo uses his full recovery to instantly heal it. Kang becomes confused, wondering how a combat hunter can also use healing magic, and he starts to think Jinwoo is dangerous. He disappears once again, but Jinwoo is now able to block his attacks by tracking his bloodlust. Jinwoo uses his murderous intent, completely overwhelming Kang, and he's defeated in an instant. Jinwoo completes his quest, and he also acquires the stealth skill. Kang wonders what he is, but Jinwoo says he isn't sure, but says that he's just a hunter that gets stronger with every fight. He thinks about how he's gotten stronger, but also feels something inside of him falling apart. Jui and Song-chi thank him for saving them, and he tells them to get out of the dungeon while he finishes the rest, as he heads to take on the boss alone. We see Jinchul arriving at the scene, and he's surprised to learn Kang has been killing people in secret, thinking he was too careless as his supervisor. His assistant leads him to the survivors, and he's shocked to see Jinwoo among them. He wonders who defeated Kang, so Jinwoo thinks he's about to be exposed, but Song-chi suddenly claims that he was the one who defeated Kang. Jinchul wonders how he did it, since he's lower ranked than Kang, so he explains it was because he had a healer, but Jinchul still finds it sus, but decides to accept it for now, and Jinwoo realizes he can't get cocky just because he defeated Kang, because he can now sense that Jinchul is A-ranked, and he stands no chance against him. Songchi apologizes for overstepping, but thinks Jinwoo must have a good reason for hiding his strength, saying this is his way of repaying him. Jui realizes that Jinwoo has changed, but she still freaks out during her missions, thinking she doesn't have what it takes to become a successful hunter. She recalls how she had to save him during their past missions, because he always got injured, and she reminds him that he promised to have dinner with her. She shows him the essence stone he gave her, saying she's going to retire so that she can stay with her parents and help them with the family business. She tells him to visit her during his free time, and she returns the stone as they bid each other farewell. Jinwoo recalls that Jinchul warned him to be careful because Donsuk's brother is looking into him. He recognizes Dongsu as an S-rank hunter, and Jinchul tells him that Dongsu doesn't care about the facts, saying he will be coming for them, because they were with Donsuk when he got killed. Jinchul explains that the law is powerless against S-rank hunters because they're too powerful, so he advises Jinwoo to leave the country with his family, making Jinwoo realize he needs to get stronger to defend himself. After some time, we see Jinwoo with Yujin as they prepare to raid a C-rank dungeon. Yujin reveals that he has assembled a strike team, explaining that he chose the hunters who are absolutely useless because they don't need to fight anyway. Jinwoo realizes that he recruited a minor, but he explains that it doesn't matter, and a girl named Song-yi approaches him, saying she's qualified to work as a hunter. So he starts asking her questions, and we learn that she's an E-rank hunter who has no raiding experience whatsoever. Jinwoo tells the other hunters to wait outside, while he and Yujin clear the dungeon together, but one of them asks if they are serious, because they're paying everyone 3 million just to do nothing. Yujin confirms this, saying they don't need to fight, but they aren't allowed to tell anyone about their deal, or they need to pay him 10 times the amount. Yujin wears a new set of armor, saying he's planning to use it during the raid, but Jinwoo pokes him, and he crashes to the ground, so Jinwoo advises him to take it off, because he can't even move while wearing it. They enter the gate, but everyone thinks they're insane, thinking they won't make it because they're low-rank hunters. But after an hour, everyone sees Yujin leaving the gate, and they realize that the dungeon has been cleared, and they can't believe it, wondering how they defeated the boss. They decide to head to the next gate, and Yujin reveals that they plan to clear 3 dungeons in one day, saying everyone's going to earn 9 million in total. Jinwoo encounters countless monsters during the raids, but he easily defeats all of them, allowing him to level up. Yujin realizes that Jinwoo is getting stronger because he's using new skills, and he notes that stealth is useful because it allows him to fight while he's invisible. Yujin takes the loot, as Jinwoo realizes that he doesn't have enough mana to use his skills, so he thinks about increasing his intellect. He suddenly receives a notification, which mentions that he has reached the required level, so he can now accept the job change quest. At the White Tiger Guild, we meet the manager named Sang, as he learns that someone spent 150 million to acquire the rights to the C-rank gates. His assistant tells him about Yujin's strike team, explaining that Yujin is the son of a wealthy businessman. But Sang thinks he's crazy, and he looks into the members of the team, realizing that Jinwoo is one of them, and he takes interest in him. Sang believes that Jinwoo has reawakened, telling his assistant that Jinwoo has survived 3 major disasters, which led to the death of several hunters. He believes the only explanation is that Jinwoo has gotten stronger, so he decides to look for him. Sang finds Yujin's group, but he wonders why they're having a picnic, and Song-yi approaches him, telling him that the area is off limits. So he explains that his curiosity led him there, asking her if she's a part of the team, but he wonders why Jinwoo isn't with them. He realizes that Jinwoo is trying to clear the dungeon without them, thinking he must be extremely powerful, and Sang decides to leave. Moments later, Jinwoo exits the gate, and he asks Yujin if he can take a day off, because he has something he needs to do. But Yujin explains that they still need to clear the dungeons he reserved, and they realize that they might have to cancel it, but Yujin won't get his money back. We cut to Choi, as he has a nightmare about his raid on Jeju Island. We learn that he's been having the same dream, but he realizes that it's almost time to put his plan into action. We return to Jinwoo, as Sang approaches him, and they have a drink at a cafe, as Sang introduces himself, saying he's from the White Tiger Guild. He tells Jinwoo that they want to hire him, and they're willing to pay him twice the amount that Yujin is paying him. But he asks Sang how much the White Tiger Guild is worth, so he reveals that it's close to 50 billion, and Jinwoo explains that they can't afford him, because Yujin offered to give him a building worth 30 billion. Sang is surprised to hear this, and Jinwoo is about to leave, but he wonders how Sang learned about him. He suddenly disappears, and Sang panics as Jinwoo cuts him. He realizes that Jinwoo is using the stealth skill, so Sang immediately apologizes for looking into him, saying he meant no harm. He reveals that he came across Jinwoo's name while he was looking into the dungeon market, saying the guild needs C-rank dungeons to train rookies, but Yujin already bought the rights to all of them. He explains that he and his assistant are the only ones who know about Jinwoo, and he tells Sang that he wants to keep a low profile, threatening to kill them if they write a report about him. So Sang promises to keep his mouth shut, and Jinwoo spares his life, explaining that his team needs to monopolize the C-rank gates until they achieve their goal. He offers to sell 3 gates for 900 million, but Sang thinks it's too expensive, offering 600 million instead, and Jinwoo ends up agreeing. Before they part ways, Jinwoo tells Sang to open his mouth, and he gives Sang a healing potion, so he asks Jinwoo if he trusts him, but he just tells Sang to keep his mouth shut. Jinwoo returns home, and Yujin tells him that he has received the 600 million from Sang, asking him how he was able to sell the dungeons at a ridiculously high price. But he refuses to say anything, and Sang realizes that he has been scammed, because there are other C-rank dungeons selling for less than half the price. He receives a message from Jinwoo, which mentions that he's going to forget that Sang spied on him, and Sang realizes that they're now even. Jinwoo leaves the city, and he goes to a forest, where he plans to complete the job change quest. He notes that he was given time to decide, thinking the quest is going to be difficult, but he accepts it anyway, and a portal appears, so he enters it, as he wonders what's waiting for him inside. He realizes that the dungeon is too peaceful, but the system informs him that he can't heal while he's inside, and he can't leave until he has cleared the dungeon. A knight approaches him, so he equips his dagger, and he manages to land a hit, but it doesn't do anything. So he tries using his skill to land a critical hit, but his dagger can't pierce through its armor, and he realizes that his weapon is useless against it. So he uses his bare hands, and he's able to remove its head, killing it in an instant, but a group of knights suddenly appear. We cut to Yujin, as he has dinner with his family. We learn that his brother Yusung is trying to establish a guild, but he can't find an S-rank hunter to lead it, so he thinks about recruiting hunters from overseas. He knows that Yujin is also trying to start a guild in secret, so he tells Yujin not to get in the way, but he chooses not to say anything, thinking his brother will be surprised to learn about Jinwoo. Jinwoo uses his brute strength to defeat the knights, and he notes that he's getting tired, but he suddenly senses a presence, so he takes his weapon, and he stabs an assassin, realizing that they have the stealth skill. A mage suddenly attacks him, but it misses, as he realizes that the enemies in the dungeon are similar to the ones he fought in the past. He knows that dealing with them is going to be difficult, because they have different weaknesses, and he notes that he needs higher intellect to deal with the mages. So he struggles against them, and he realizes that his fatigue is starting to build up. But he still manages to defeat them, and he realizes that they dropped an armor, so he decides to wear it, realizing that it's invisible, and it doesn't restrict his movements. He notes that his fatigue has recovered, so he decides to proceed deeper, and he sees an enormous door, so he opens it, thinking he's about to meet the boss. He enters the throne room, where he senses a powerful presence, as the knight commander named Igris appears. He realizes that it's stronger than him, thinking it's nothing like the opponents he defeated so far. It suddenly charges in, and he's able to evade its attack, but it shatters the pillar behind him. Igris takes a swing, and he tries to block it, but it sends him flying, and Igris continues to pursue him as he struggles to keep up with its movements. He tries to fight back, but it dodges his attacks, and he manages to land a hit, but it doesn't do anything. Igris strikes back, and he tries to defend against it, but it manages to overpower him, pushing him back. He notes that he can match Igris's speed, but he's no match for its strength, and his dagger is useless against its armor, so he wonders how he can defeat it. He doesn't think he can win without his weapon, but he decides to throw hands, and Igris throws away his weapons, wanting to fight fair. we see Gunyi in his office as Jinchul joins him, telling him that Choi has made his move, and Gunyi receives a call from Choi, who reveals that his group is ready to head out. He thanks Gunyi for approving the mission, and Gunyi explains that the public hasn't forgotten about Jeju Island, telling him to be careful. We return to Jinwoo, as Igris smashes him to the ground and throws him away. He endures a brutal beatdown, and he notes that he would have died if it weren't for his armor. Thinking the only way to defeat Igris is to boost his speed, so he uses his dash skill and he attacks Igris with everything he has. But it manages to evade his attacks, and it counters, launching him to the air and smashing him into the ground. But Jinwoo refuses to give up, attacking Igris relentlessly, and he's able to hit its head, causing it to black out. But it immediately recovers, and it becomes enraged, delivering a devastating combo and sending him crashing against the wall. Jinwoo is exhausted, as Igris summons its sword, trying to finish him off, but he still refuses to give up, pushing the sword away. He equips his dagger, and he uses it to blind Igris, causing it to become stunned, as he smashes it against the corner. But Igris takes his dagger, trying to use it to kill him, but it suddenly disappears, because it can't change owners, so it returns to Jinwoo's inventory. He equips it once again, and he targets Igris's neck, attacking it with everything he has. The dagger pierces through it, killing Igris in an instant, as Jinwoo realizes he has won, but he notes that he just got lucky, because Igris was the superior fighter. The system shows him his rewards, which includes an S-rank helmet, so he tries wearing it, as he notes that this is the first time he acquired such a powerful equipment. He also receives a rune stone, which allows him to learn a skill called the Ruler's Hand, and he wonders why Igris dropped a teleportation stone, thinking he has already cleared the dungeon. But portals suddenly appear, as the system tells him to survive for as long as possible. It displays a timer, as countless knights enter the room, so Jinwoo takes them on, but he realizes that there's too many of them. So he uses his stealth skill, thinking about hiding to buy time, but a mage appears, and it casts a spell, which allows the knights to see him. He's about to get hit, so he uses his murderous intent, stunning the knights, and he takes them out, but he realizes that he's running out of mana. He struggles to fight on, realizing that he has only survived for 5 minutes, and he thinks about using the teleportation stone, but a knight suddenly attacks him, causing him to drop it. He gets sent flying, and thinks that without the teleportation stone, the only way to survive is to continue fighting. He does his best against the knights, but his stamina is low, so he can't use his skills. He barely has any HP left, but he refuses to give up and continues to fight. However, he reaches his limits and is brought to his knees. He thinks about his companions telling him he's done enough, and he sees his old self, thinking he should be happy with how far he has come. Meanwhile, at the association, we learn more about the previous Jeju Island raid. It was a horrific failure where many lives were lost, scarring all the hunters that survived, but Gunyi thinks it's something they need to overcome, or else they will all be destroyed. Jinwoo continues to struggle, and his other self tells him that although he might look different, he's still the same E-rank hunter, telling him to know his place. Jinwoo gets smashed into the ground, and a knight approaches to finish him off, but he notices that his daily quest is just about to expire. He gets a penalty for not completing it, and gets teleported to the penalty zone just in time. He uses the store to buy potions to recover his stamina, but he's suddenly surrounded by giant centipedes. But he charges at them, determined to get even stronger. He manages to defeat them all, gaining multiple levels, and he has 10 minutes left in the area. He checks his shop for new weapons, and he buys the Night Killer Dagger, which deals bonus damage to armored monsters. He also uses the rune stone he got from Igris, and he gains the Ruler's Hand skill, which allows him to affect objects without directly touching them. His timer reaches 0, and he's sent back to the dungeon, but he's ready for round 2. Meanwhile, we see Choi's group preparing for another raid on Jeju Island. Heian apologizes for not being able to be a part of the last raid, but they suddenly detect a strange mana source in the water. Jinwoo is able to defeat the knights with his new weapon, but he feels something is off, because he doesn't seem to be gaining any XP. He notices that the mages are casting some kind of strange spell, and he realizes that the knights are just summoned monsters. He throws his dagger to take out one of the mages, and its summoned knights are also destroyed. Jinwoo continues to go after the mages, using his new skill to pull one of them in. However, the 3 remaining mages work together, and they summon a giant golem. But Jinwoo dodges its attacks, and he goes straight for the mages. The golem continues to attack, but Jinwoo pushes it back and manages to destroy it. The timer reaches over 4 hours, and he completes the job change quest. He gets to switch to an advanced class based on his performance, and he's given the Necromancer class. He wonders what's going on, since Necromancers are usually casters, but he hasn't put any of his stats into intellect. He thinks it's a waste since it doesn't suit his fighting style, and he's given an option to reject it. But when he tries to reject it, the system mentions that the Necromancer is a hidden class, so he ends up accepting it, and since he was able to exceed the survival time and kill all the monsters, he gains a number of bonus points. His advancement points exceed the threshold, causing dark energy to swell around him, and his class is upgraded to the Shadow Monarch. The job change is completed, and he starts to hear the voices of the knights, as he gains the ability to use shadow extraction on them, and it requires a command word to activate.
Arise.
Causing the knights to stand once more and become his minions. He thinks about controlling something stronger, so he turns his attention to Igris. He uses his extraction skill, and it suddenly pulses with energy, but the skill fails, and he only has 2 more attempts. He tries again, but it fails for a second time. Jinwoo thinks Igris must have been waiting for his king's return, but asks him to serve him instead. He activates his extraction skill one last time, and he successfully manages to turn Igris into one of his soldiers. We see Jinwoo sleeping in his room when he receives a call from Gina, who reminds him that he needs to attend a meeting in her school, and he realizes that he's already late. He heads to her school as she realizes that he looks different and her classmates find him attractive, so she offers to introduce him to one of them since he doesn't have a girlfriend, but he tells her they're late. He talks to her teacher, who thinks Gina could get into medical school since she's an excellent student. But the teacher wonders if he will let her work as a hunter if she awakens her powers, and he mentions that he won't, so the teacher asks for a favor. Jinwoo meets Song Yi, and he shows her Gina's picture, so she realizes that he's her brother. She mentions that she won't return to school because she wants to focus on her career, but he tells her she can't make a living as an A-rank hunter. She refuses to listen to him, reminding him that he's also E-rank, but he explains that he isn't telling her to give up. We see Jinchul at the airport as he welcomes Donsu to Korea, who recognizes him as the chief of the Hunters Association. He asks Donsu how long he will stay there, and he tells Jinchul not to worry because he won't be staying for long. Jinchul knows that he wants to meet Jinwoo and Yujin because they were involved in his brother's death. But he tells Jinchul not to play dumb because the surveillance team knows that he's there to kill them. We see Choi with Gunyi, who reveals that the monsters on Jeju Island have evolved, and they're trying to use their wings to fly across the sea. Choi knows that they still can't fly far because they fell into the sea, but he thinks they might become an even greater threat in the future. We return to Jinwoo, as he joins the other hunters waiting near a gate, and he greets Sang, who realizes that he brought Song Yi. We learn that he asked Sang to let her join the raid, and he mentions that their timing is perfect because the C-rank gate just appeared. But a man named Chu suddenly interrupts them, and Jinwoo doesn't recognize him, so Sang reveals that he's an A-rank hunter and he will serve as the group's tank. Sang explains that they will have an on-site practice, and Chu is the leader of the assault team, but he looks down on Jinwoo and Song Yi since they're both A-rank hunters. Sang reveals that there are 10 hunters in the team, and half of them are in the B rank, but his assistant Hyun tells Jinwoo to let them do everything, because most of them are noobs. The team enters the gate, but Jinwoo suddenly gets a strange feeling, and the gate suddenly turns red, so everyone wonders what's happening. Jinwoo knows they're in danger, so he tells Sang to contact the assault team, but he gets sucked into the gate. Beck learns about the incident, and he wonders why the gate turned red, so he decides to investigate it himself. The team finds themselves in the middle of nowhere, and they wonder why the gate disappeared, so Chu mentions that they're in a red gate. Jinwoo explains that they have lost contact with the outside world, saying the only way to get out is to defeat the boss, or wait until the gate collapses. They suddenly get attacked, and an arrow kills one of the C-ranked hunters, so everyone prepares to fight. Song Yi realizes that Jinwoo saved her life, and Chu sees ice elves above them. Jinwoo notes that they targeted the weakest members of the team, and they jump away, as Chu tells everyone that they need to follow his orders to survive. But he mentions that he can't lead them all, so he decides to split them into 2 groups, saying he will make sure that everyone in his party will survive. One of the C rank hunters wants to join him, but Chu pushes him back, saying only the B rank hunters are allowed in his group. He mentions that 1 day in the Red Gate is equal to an hour in the outside world, and he explains they could be stuck there for months, so he needs to leave the dead weight behind. But a girl named Heejin decides to join Jinwoo's party because she saw him catch the arrow, so she knows that he's reliable. Chu mentions that his group will take the main road, and Jinwoo decides to head towards the forest. So they split up, and Chu sees claw marks on the trees, so he knows that there are ice bears in the area. He thinks Jinwoo's party will get wiped out, but his companion doesn't care, and he tells everyone to prepare for battle as a group of ice bears appear. One of them attacks him, but he stops it with his shield and slices it in half. Meanwhile, Heejin tells Jinwoo that they're in the territory of the ice bears, so she suggests turning back. But he tells her they should go deeper in the forest because he knows that the elves are an even greater threat. He realizes how cold it is, so he takes jackets out of his inventory and gives them to everyone in the group to wear. But they wonder why he has 4 jackets, because even a high-rank hunter can't carry more than 3 items. Song-yi asks him who he is, but he reminds her that he was the one who brought her there, so he thinks it's his responsibility to protect her. But he wants her to stop asking questions, and he tells the others to do the same thing. An ice bear appears, so his companions panic, but he prepares to take it on. We see Beck at the red portal as he realizes that it has been sealed off, and Sang tells him that Jinwoo is inside. Beck asks about his rank, so Sang reveals that he's an E-rank hunter, but he thinks Jinwoo has reawakened. Dong-soo joins them, and Beck wonders what he's doing there, because he's supposed to be in America. But he asks Beck why he allowed E-rank hunters to enter the gate, saying he knows that Jinwoo is inside, and Jinchul thinks he's lucky, since Dong-soo can't get inside. We return to Jinwoo, as he defeats the ice bears with his bare hands, and the others start eating the bear meat. Heejin thinks there are bears nearby, so she notes that they can't let their guard down, but Song-yi wonders why Jinwoo left them there. Jinwoo heads to the lair of the ice bears, and he summons his shadow army, ordering them to attack. So they charge in, and the bears try to fight them, but the mages revive the knights, as Jinwoo notes that it drains his mana. A giant bear appears, so his shadow army tries to take it down, but it wipes them out, and he realizes that he's out of mana. He orders Igris to fight it, and the bear tries to crush him, but he counters and cuts its legs. It tries to unleash its powers, but he slices off its head, and Jinwoo is impressed, as he realizes that Igris is stronger than him. He turns the bears into shadows, and he adds them all to his army. We see Chu's party struggling against the elves, and his companions beg him to save them, but they all end up dying. He can't believe what's happening, because he was about to become an elite member of the White Tigers, but he's no match for the elves. He sees one of them smiling, so he freaks out, and he runs away, as their boss watches him from a distance. We return to Sang, as he notes that 3 hours have passed since the hunters entered the gate, and Dong-soo thinks Jinwoo is already dead, so he thinks about leaving. But he wonders what Jinwoo is doing inside the gate, since he isn't a member of the White Tigers. Sang reveals that Jinwoo is his friend, so he allowed him to join the party, but Dong-soo strangles Sang, asking him what he's up to. Beck tells Dong-soo to let him go, but he tells Beck he doesn't take orders from him, so they both unleash their powers, creating a powerful shockwave, and they attack each other, but Jinchul stops them. He mentions that Dong-suk was killed by monsters, but Dong-soo doesn't believe him, thinking Yujin murdered his brother. So Jinchul wonders why he went after Jinwoo, and he reveals that he just wanted an excuse to kill someone, but he suddenly receives a message and decides to leave. We see Chu walking around the forest, and he sees the defeated bears, wondering if Jinwoo's party killed them. But he thinks they shouldn't be strong enough, so he believes it's the work of the elves. But he sees Jinwoo's group chillin', and he wonders why they're still alive, as he realizes that they have everything they need to survive. He becomes angry, and he blames them for the death of his teammates, saying they were wiped out because they didn't have enough supplies. He accuses them of hiding the party's food and gear, and he threatens to kill them, but Jinwoo suddenly slams him into the ground, telling him he was the one who got his teammates killed. Jinwoo knows that the elves followed Chu there, so he calls them out, and they come out of hiding. Their leader Baruka mentions that humans are trash, so Jinwoo asks him if he's referring to them, but he's surprised that Jinwoo can understand that language. He thinks it's because of the system, and Baruka mentions that his soldier wants to fight him. Jinwoo recognizes him as the elf who attacked them, so he slices his head off. He charges at Baruka, who blocks his attack, and Baruka asks him why he's hanging out with humans, because he's not like the others. Baruka reveals that elves hear voices in their heads whenever they see humans, but he explains that he can't hear it when he's looking at Jinwoo. So he doesn't want to fight him, and he promises to spare him if he hands over his companions. Jinwoo asks Baruka why the elves fight humans, and he's about to answer the question, but he suddenly glitches out, and he tells Jinwoo to hand over his companions again. So he becomes confused, and Baruka tells him to accept his proposal, but he refuses, so Baruka realizes that he wants to fight, telling him he's outnumbered. But he summons his shadow army, and his companions can't believe what they're seeing, wondering how he's able to do it. Baruka orders his men to attack, and they start fighting the shadow army, as Jinwoo's companions run away. But the archers prepare to shoot them, so Jinwoo quickly cuts them down, but he notes that he's running out of mana, because his soldiers are struggling against the elves. Baruka charges at him, and Jinwoo knows that he's extremely powerful, thinking he can't defeat him even with Igris's help. They start fighting, and they appear to be evenly matched, but Baruka manages to land a kick. He mentions that he's having fun, but the shadow mages blast him with a massive fireball. Chu sees the explosion, and he charges at Jinwoo, as Baruka rushes towards him, but Igris suddenly appears, and he stabs Chu, who realizes that Jinwoo predicted his movements. Jinwoo turns him into one of his minions, and he pushes Baruka back. Jinwoo decides to name him Iron, and he lets out a powerful scream, which provokes Baruka. So he rushes forward, and he starts fighting Iron, telling him he's too slow. Song Yi and the others observe the fight, and they have no idea what's happening, realizing the battle is on another level. Baruka mentions that Iron is no match for him, so he tells Igris and Jinwoo to join the fight, and they gang up on him, but he still manages to keep up with them. Iron uses his provoke again, and Baruka attacks him with a devastating blow, but Jinwoo suddenly stabs him from behind. But he realizes that he missed the vital areas, and Baruka tells Jinwoo not to underestimate him. But Jinwoo tells him his soldiers are weak, and he realizes that his army has been wiped out, so he gets angry, and he rushes forward. Jinwoo throws his knife, but he misses, so Baruka mocks him, but he pulls it back with his ruler's hand, and it's about to hit Baruka. He manages to block it, but his knife ends up breaking, and Iron restrains him, as the mages blast him with their flames, causing a massive explosion. But he still manages to break free, and he threatens to kill everyone, but Jinwoo stabs him again, telling him the fight is over. Baruka doesn't believe him, but Iron appears behind him, and crushes him with his hammer. Jinwoo levels up, but Iron keeps smashing Baruka, so Jinwoo tells him to stop. His companions ask him if it's over, and he tells them they can go home, so they celebrate their victory. Sang mentions that a week has passed inside the gate, and he tells Baek to go home, but he insists on staying, since the members of his guild are trapped inside. The gate suddenly returns to normal, and he thinks Chu saved everyone, but only Jinwoo's group makes it out. The gate disappears, so Baek realizes that Chu didn't make it, and he can't believe only the low-rank hunters survived. He wonders what happened, and he tells Jinwoo he wants to talk to him, but he refuses to say anything. So Baek tries to intimidate him, telling him that 6 members of the White Tigers went missing, and he mentions that he's the person in charge, so he wants to know what happened. But Jinwoo mentions that he saved 2 members of the guild, telling Baek he should be thanking him instead, so he apologizes for his actions. As Jinwoo leaves, Baek asks Heejin why he appears to be upset, so she explains that she doesn't know, saying his mood was suddenly ruined after he defeated the boss. Sang thinks he's just tired, saying he's not a bad person, and Baek orders Sang to bring him to their guild. Jinwoo takes Song Yi to her home, and she tells him to be careful, saying she's grateful for everything he has done for her. As he makes his way home, he looks at Baruka's knife, and he recalls that he wasn't able to turn him into one of his minions because he wasn't strong enough to control him. The next day, Yujin visits him, telling him they need to go, but he mentions that they need to pick someone up. Song Yi joins them in the van, and Jinwoo asks her if she was able to sleep, because it was already morning by the time she got home, so Yu-jin thinks they spent the night together. He reminds Jinwoo that she's a minor, but he says he doesn't care, and they make their way to their next mission. Yu-jin watches Jinwoo's minions as they slaughter the monsters, and he can't believe what's happening. He asks Jinwoo about them, so he explains he summoned them with his skill. After the fight, he orders them to gather the mana crystals, but Yu-jin tells Jinwoo to let him collect the gems, so a knight gives him what he wants. Meanwhile, we see a strange man in a wreckage, and a soldier panics as he sees him. But the man tells him not to worry, telling him his companions are still alive, and he explains that he just wants to go home. We return to Jinwoo, as he celebrates with Yu-jin, because they were able to complete 19 raids together. He asks Yu-jin about his plans, so he reveals that he will take the written test to get the guild master's license, and use it as a bargaining chip to negotiate with his father. But Jinwoo mentions that they won't be seeing each other for a while, because there's somewhere he needs to go. Yu-jin thinks Jinwoo finds him annoying, and he mentions that Yu-sung doesn't like him, saying they never spent time together as brothers. He adds that Jinwoo has done so much for him, and he wants them to be siblings, so Jinwoo mentions that he will start treating him as his younger brother. We see the mysterious man in prison, as the guards talk about him, revealing that his name is Il-hwan, and he was trapped in a gate 10 years ago, but he ended up in America. They add that he can't speak English, and they needed a Korean interpreter to interrogate him, so they decided to call Dong-soo. Jinwoo returns to the demon's castle, as he recalls that he was level 20 when he fought the Cerberus, but now his level has tripled, so he thinks he can easily defeat the monsters in the dungeon. He uses his key to open the door, and he receives a quest, which tells him to collect 10,000 demon souls in the castle. He notes that it's a ridiculous amount, but he's determined to complete it, because he needs to collect the items needed for the elixir of life. We see Yu-jin talking to his father, and he mentions that he wants to become the leader of their guild. But Han knows that Jinwoo helped Yu-jin obtain the guild master license, so he thinks Yu-jin isn't worthy to become their leader. But he still insists on becoming the guild master, so Han decides to give him a chance, under the condition that he recruits Jinwoo into their guild. We return to Jinwoo, as he defeats the demons on the first floor, but the system tells him he can't turn them into his minions, because their mana is contaminated. He receives a permit, which allows him to enter the second floor, but he can only use it on the teleportation circle. He notes that he doesn't want to walk, because the dungeon is enormous, so he summons the leader of the Ice Bears, and he orders it to take him to the teleportation circle. Demons block their path, but it charges past them, and he's impressed by its strength, so he decides to name it Tank. We see Haein in the swimming pool, and the other girls think she's gorgeous. But she recalls that Choi told her about the winged monsters from Jeju Island, and she wonders why he isn't telling the public about it. So he reveals that it's an order from the association, saying they don't want everyone to panic. But he tells her not to worry, as he mentions that they need to strengthen their guild so that they can defeat the monsters. Jinwoo continues to hunt demons, as he notes that the dungeon is filled with B-rank monsters, but they continue to get stronger as he climbs the castle. He notes that it's easy to clear the floors, as long as he focuses on the demons that carry entry permits. But he thinks the castle has 100 floors, and he notes that he needs to hurry, because he doesn't have enough food to reach the top floor. Meanwhile, Heejin tells Sang that Jinwoo isn't home, so she thinks they shouldn't have come to his place. Sang knows that he hasn't been participating in raids, saying his last known location is at the very center of the urban area. She wonders how Sang knows about it, so he explains that he knows how to do his job, but he wonders where he went. Jinwoo completes his quest, and he sees the Lord of the lower floors. His minions start fighting the demons in the area, as he notes that his intelligence has increased, so he now has better control over his army. But the boss suddenly attacks them, so he punches it with all his might, and it gets blown away, as he realizes his strength has also improved. But it immediately recovers, and it charges at him, so Iron gives him his shield, and he uses it to defend himself, as the boss attacks him relentlessly. He sees an opening, so he lunges at the boss, but it takes a swing, and he realizes that he's about to get hit. But he uses Ruler's hand to stop the attack, and he manages to dodge it, as he realizes that the boss can read his movements. He notes that he needs to aim for its head to defeat it, and he runs away, as it chases after him. But he sees a building, so he uses his skills to climb it, as the boss crashes into it. He then takes his knife, and he launches a surprise attack, cutting the boss's neck. It falls to the ground, and the debris crushes its body, as Jinwoo receives a world tree fragment as a reward for defeating it. We see Il-hwan in the interrogation room, where Dong-soo calls him a talking monster, but he explains that he's human, telling Dong-soo to test his DNA if he doesn't believe him. He mentions that he's upset because his boss interrupted him when he was about to have some fun. But Il-hwan asks him how much he knows about gates and magic beasts, thinking the worst disaster is about to happen, and he mentions that his goal is to prevent it. Dong-soo thinks they can stop it if they gather the hunters around the world, but Il-hwan tells him they won't stand a chance. He checks Il-hwan's record, realizing he's Jinwoo's father, so he threatens to kill him, telling him his son is already dead. We see firemen at the scene, as the people realize that the disaster was caused by two S-rank hunters. But they think they're lucky that the damage didn't spread, because Dong-soo was defeated in an instant. We return to Jinwoo, as his minions slaughter the demons on the 75th floor, and he tells the boss that the battle is one-sided. But the boss just stares at him, as he wonders if magic beasts also feel fear, and he finishes it off, as the system tells him he has leveled up again. But he realizes that he's out of food, and he notes that he still has a long way to go, because there are 25 floors left in the castle. We learn that he received an earring and a necklace from the bosses he defeated, and they're part of a set which boosts his stats. But he notes that he still needs to find an item to complete it, thinking the next boss will drop it, and he also received an item called the Avaricious Glass, which can boost the magic power of his mages. He opens a cursed loot box, which gives him a key, but the system doesn't give him information about it. He notes that he was able to gather 2 of the items needed for the Elixir of Life, and he thinks about finding the last item to save his mother. But he decides to call it a day, thinking he will find it the next time he returns. He notes how his level has increased, but he thinks he still needs to get even stronger to obtain the last item of the Elixir. He thinks he won't be able to raise his level as an E-rank hunter, since he won't be able to participate in the higher level raids, so he decides to have his rank reassessed. We see Hyun at the Hunters Association, and he checks out the candidates that are there to be assessed, but he's surprised to see Jinwoo, and he reports to Baek, who decides to head there immediately. One of the candidates mentions that he needs to make money by becoming a hunter because he wants to be a good provider for his family. So another candidate tells him not to worry, because he will be able to make a living as a hunter as long as he isn't an E-ranker. Jinwoo takes the test, and the examiner tells him to place his hand on the black crystal, so he touches it, but she keeps getting an error. The director asks her what's wrong, so she tells him the machine isn't working, and he tries to help, but he also gets an error. He's shocked by the result, telling her there's nothing wrong with the machine, but it can't measure Jinwoo's magic power because it's off the charts, so they think he's qualified to become the country's 10th S-rank hunter. Meanwhile, we see Jinchul talking to Choi, telling him the association performed an autopsy on a winged ant to estimate its magic power, but it will take time before they reach a conclusion. Choi knows about the Red Gate incident, and he asks Jinchul who defeated the dungeon boss, but he mentions that he doesn't know. They suddenly hear a commotion, so they decide to check it out, and we see everyone at the association staring at Jinwoo, because they know the machine couldn't measure his power. The director tells him to return for his license after 3 days, because they still need to determine his rank, and Hyun thinks about approaching him, but Choi suddenly appears. Everyone recognizes him as the representative of the Hunters Guild, and he sees that Jinwoo has some mad aura. He introduces himself to Jinwoo, asking him if he wants to join their guild, but Jinwoo just ignores him, and everyone can't believe he rejected his offer. He suddenly disappears, so they think he's an assassin type, but Choi is surprised when he sees Baek rushing there to look for Jinwoo. So he realizes that the White Tigers are interested in him, thinking Jinwoo must have been the one who conquered the Red Gate. We see Jinwoo with his mother, thinking she could wake up at any moment, and when he leaves her room, he sees Jinchul, so he wonders if the surveillance team is looking into him. So Jinchul explains that the team's job is to control hunters, but they aren't monitoring him because he committed a crime, telling him someone wants to meet him. Gun-Yi appears, and he introduces himself as the president of the Hunters Association. He congratulates Jinwoo for becoming an S-rank hunter, but he wonders why the director asked him to return after 3 days. So Gun-Yi explains that it's a grace period, saying they wanted to meet him before everyone learned about his new rank. Gunyi explains that the association needs good hunters, but most of them join the big guilds for money and fame, saying Jinchul is one of their experts, but he isn't even an S-rank hunter. Gunyi invites Jinwoo to join them, and he promises to give him the most important position, but Jinwoo wonders why he would do that. So he explains that the hunters protect the citizens from magic beasts, and the 5 major guilds are at the center, but they're barely maintaining the balance. He mentions that it would be ruined if Jinwoo joins one of them, so he should join the Hunters Association instead, and make it the 6th power that controls them. Gunyi tells him he should do it for his country, and he considers joining the association, thinking it would give him a brighter future. He notes that Gunyi is the first S-class hunter in the country, and he's already over 80, but he's still ridiculously strong, and Jinwoo wants to work with him. But he decides to refuse the invitation, and Gunyi thinks it's because they don't pay as much money, but Jinwoo explains that he wants to keep fighting, saying he belongs in the dungeon. Gunyi realizes he's serious, and he notes that if he were younger, he would have wanted to fight by his side. He tells Jinwoo he won't force him to join them, and he thanks him for his time. As Jinwoo leaves, Gunyi is disappointed in himself, because even S-rank healers can't cure aging, and he tells Jinchul to cancel his appointments because he doesn't want to be disturbed. Meanwhile in America, Dong-su wakes up in the hospital, and the deputy director asks him if Il-hwan is really a magic beast. He thinks it must be true, because he had superhuman powers, and the deputy director tells him to return after he recovers. He wonders what happened to Il-hwan, so the deputy director reveals that they're tracking him, but he doesn't think they can capture him, since even Dong-su was no match for him. He recalls that Il-hwan told him to leave his family alone, and he can't believe he got humiliated, so he wants to get revenge, but he knows he will need an artifact to defeat him. We learn that artifacts are high-level equipment, which can't be created by craftsmen, and we see Jinwoo browsing the online shop for artifacts, but he realizes that they're insanely expensive. He thinks he needs to be fully equipped to conquer the demon's castle, and he considers selling the avaricious glass that he received, thinking it should be worth a lot, since it can double the damage of magic. But he thinks it will attract attention, because he's just an A-rank hunter, so everyone will wonder how he got it. He thinks about entering an A-rank gate, so that he can use it as an excuse, and he sees the Hunters Guild looking for someone to join the mining team. We see Gunyi browsing Jinwoo's documents, wondering if he's a false ranker, because he looks like a different person in his photo. But Jinchul thinks it's unlikely, because there are records of him being critically injured. Jinchul reveals that he's paying for his mother's medical expenses, as well as his sister's tuition fees, so Gunyi realizes he's a good person. But Jinchul mentions that he joined the Hunters Guild's mining team, and Gunyi doesn't understand why he would do that. We return to Jinwoo, as he joins the other miners, and he introduces himself as an E-rank hunter. We learn that for large-scale raid missions, mining teams collect the mana crystals, while recovery teams dispose of the monster's remains, after the assault teams hunt them down. We see Choi inside the gate, and he tells everyone to stand back, as he unleashes his flames to burn all of the monsters. His flames return, and he orders the tanks to protect him, so they form a shield, which stops the fire from reaching them. He explains that he held back, because they can't use the monsters' bodies if they get overcooked. He notes that the magic beasts have been wiped out, so he tells everyone to move forward. As he leaves the gate, Jinwoo sees him, and he's impressed that he was able to lead everyone out of the A-rank dungeon. Heian also comes out of the gate, and Jinwoo recognizes her as the Vice Master of the Hunters Guild, realizing she has a terrifying aura. She also senses him, but she wonders if she was just imagining things, because his aura suddenly vanished without a trace. The mining and recovery teams enter the gate, and they start doing their jobs. But Jinwoo notes that he can sense the boss's magic power, thinking it's stronger than the ones he defeated in the demon's castle, so he wants to see how powerful it is. He realizes that the other workers are looking down on him, since he's only an E-ranker. But as he starts working, they realize that he has incredible strength, and they're glad to have him in their team. Everyone prepares for their lunch break, but he decides to stay behind, saying he wants to finish mining the area. After they leave, he rushes to the boss's room, because he wants to have a look at it. He notes that he shouldn't defeat it, because the gate will close, and the Hunters Guild will suffer losses, but he still wants to see what it looks like. But Heian suddenly stops him, asking him what he's doing there. He realizes that he got careless, and he tells her he's lost, but she orders him to step back, telling him they're at the boss's room. He decides to leave, but she suddenly realizes that there's something special about him, and she tells him to wait. She realizes that he smells good, so she wonders if he's really a hunter. She checks his ID, and she realizes that he's an A-rank hunter, but she just tells him to be careful on his way back. Jinwoo joins the other miners, and they reveal that they heard about what happened. One of them tells him he's lucky, saying Haein patrols the dungeon during her free time because she wants to protect everyone from the boss. But they mention that they can only admire her from afar because she doesn't like the smell of hunters, which explains why she always covers her nose with a handkerchief. So Jinwoo wonders why he smells different, thinking it has something to do with the system. After that, the leader of the team gives him his salary, and he mentions that they were able to finish earlier than the recovery team, since Jinwoo worked so quickly. The man asks him if he wants to work with the team again, saying the Hunters Guild has 2 raid missions tomorrow. But he wonders how the guild can work on 2 raids at the same time, so the man explains that they have 2 assault teams, because they're the largest guild in the country. He agrees to continue working, and the man is happy to hear this, saying he will tell their boss to double his pay. At night, Haein orders a man to look into Jinwoo, but she realizes that he's already under investigation, because Choi is also interested in him. But the man reveals that all information about him has been sealed, saying he finds it strange, because it's the first time the association has done this for a low-ranking hunter. Haein continues thinking about Jinwoo, wondering why Choi and the association seem to be interested in him, and she notes that she has met countless hunters, but he's the only one who smells nice. The next day, Jinwoo joins the mining team again, and they start working in a C-rank dungeon, as the other miners watch him in awe. They want him to become a regular member of the team because they're able to finish their job early with him there, and their leader offers to pay him 5 times his salary, but he still refuses to join them. The leader of the second assault team, named Ki-hoon, mentions that he needs to borrow someone from the mining team because they need someone to carry their stuff. He promises to give risk allowance to whoever accepts the job, but nobody wants to enter the A-rank dungeon because they think it's too dangerous. Jinwoo volunteers to do it, but the other miners warn him he could die, and they tell Ki-hoon he doesn't understand anything because he just joined them yesterday. They reveal that he's just an A-rank hunter, telling Ki-hoon to find someone else to do the job, but he decides to accept Jinwoo as his team's porter. They prepare to enter the gate, as Ki-hoon tells everyone not to worry, because the Hunters Guild would never send their team if it's too dangerous. Jinwoo notes that 6 of their members are A-rank hunters, while the other 3 are B-rank, so he realizes that they're weaker than the first assault team. But he still thinks it's impressive, because the other guilds don't even have a second team. As they enter the gate, he notes that he has a bad feeling, thinking something terrible is about to happen again. But the healer Semi tells him not to worry, saying he'll be safe as long as he sticks with the team. They sense monsters approaching, so they prepare for battle, and they are attacked by a pack of jackals. Ki-hoon cuts one of them into pieces, and the tank defends the others, while the fighter cuts down 2 of them. Gina tells everyone to get down, and she uses her spell to blast the rest of the jackals. They wonder what the jackals are doing there, because they're just C-rank beasts, and Jinwoo realizes they're wearing collars, so he thinks they were used as hunting dogs. A group of high orcs appear, and one of them throws his spear. Ki-hoon blocks it with his shield, but he gets pushed back and realizes that they're strong. The tank tries to taunt them, but it doesn't work, and they go after the backline. One of the mages uses his fireball and blows one back, but the orc immediately recovers, so he realizes they have high magical resistance. The other mage, Bora, uses her spell to bind the creature, but she mentions that she can only hold it for a few seconds. So the fire mage uses his trump card, and he summons his warriors to fight the orc. Everyone struggles to defend themselves, as Ki-hoon mentions that they're outnumbered, saying it's over if they get surrounded, so he orders his teammates to move in groups of 3. He notes that high orcs can defeat A-rank hunters, so he knows that his B-rank teammates don't stand a chance, and one of them loses his arm. So Bora uses her spell to protect him, while Semi heals his arm, but an orc suddenly appears behind her, so she thinks it's all over for her. But Jinwoo uses his ruler's hand to strangle the orc, and he pulls its head off, as she wonders what's going on. He uses his stealth skill as he moves around the battlefield, and he starts attacking the orcs, because he wants to help the team without standing out. Ki-hoon realizes that the orcs suddenly got weaker, and his teammates defeat them, thinking they were able to do it by themselves. Ki-hoon struggles against one of them, but Jinwoo cuts the orc's leg, allowing him to overpower it. He cuts it in half, and everyone realizes that the fight is over, thinking it's a miracle they're still alive. They discuss how the orcs suddenly got weaker during the battle, and he wonders if Gina had something to do with it, but she notes that she doesn't have any debuffing magic. Bora mentions that it's only possible with assassin-type hunters, and we learn that she was able to detect Jinwoo's stealth skill, but she decides to let him off, since he just saved everyone. They think it's too dangerous to keep going, and Gina knows that Ki-hoon wants to clear the dungeon, because it's his first time as a captain. But she suggests retreating, and he decides to follow her advice, telling everyone they should head back. But they realize that a high-level barrier is blocking the entrance, and Bora notes that a powerful creature in the dungeon is stopping them from leaving. They suddenly sense an immense magical power, and the mages try to get rid of the barrier, but they're suddenly cursed. So Ki-hoon orders the healers to help them, but he realizes that there's an army of orcs behind them. One of the orcs approach Ki-hoon, as the others start chanting, and his body is possessed by their leader, who introduces himself as Kargalgan. He reveals that he was the one who blocked the entrance, and he tells Ki-hoon he has two options, saying he can either die at the hands of his soldiers, or meet him at his base. So Ki-hoon decides to go with him, but he tells Jinwoo about his plan to attack the boss directly, thinking the barrier will disappear once it's distracted. He tells Jinwoo to escape when he gets the chance, and find the main assault team, so he wonders if Ki-hoon is trying to get himself killed. But he explains that their mission is to close the gate, even if it costs them their lives, and Semi gives Jinwoo her will, telling him to give it to her family if she doesn't make it. He notes that their situation is desperate, and he recalls the double dungeon incident, but he thinks they're better than the hunters who left him in the temple to die. We cut to Haein, who searches for Jinwoo at the gate, but she can't find him, thinking he must have resigned from the mining team. But the leader of the miners tells her he's inside the dungeon, since he agreed to be their porter. The orcs escort Ki-hoon's team to a huge hall where they meet Kargalgan, and he welcomes them to his domain. They realize that there are countless orcs in the dungeon, and they note that he has 4 elite warriors by his side, who have immensely powerful auras. Haein wonders why Jinwoo volunteered, and she finds him suspicious, so she tells the mining leader that she wants to look inside the gate. But she realizes that she doesn't have her sword, so he lends her his pickaxe, telling her it's better than nothing. We return to Ki-hoon, as he notes that they must defeat Kargalgan, but when he removes his mask, everyone panics when they sense his tremendous power. They realize they're no match for him, and Ki-hoon wonders why he brought them there, so he reveals that he wants to entertain his soldiers by killing them off. Ki-hoon realizes that they're doomed if they don't do something, so he orders everyone to attack, but they're too afraid to move, and he charges in alone. But Kargalgan stops him with his shield, and uses his gravity magic to smash him to the ground. The other hunters watch helplessly as he throws Ki-hoon around, but Jinwoo saves him, telling him he didn't want to interfere because the dungeon belongs to their guild. But he knows that the assault team is in danger, so he tells them to escape, saying he will deal with the monsters alone. Kargalgan tries to intimidate him with his powers, but Jinwoo remains unfazed, and he summons his shadow army as he prepares to take him on. Meanwhile, the miners see Jinchul at the gate, and they wonder what the surveillance team is doing there. He asks them about Jinwoo, so their leader reveals that he's working as a porter for the assault team, but the man wonders why the surveillance team is looking for him. The other miners think he's a criminal, but Jinchul just tells them to watch the news tomorrow. They suddenly feel a strange power coming from the gate, so Jinchul orders his men to test its magic power again. We see Haein as she sees the remains of the orcs, wondering how Ki-hoon's team was able to defeat all of them. She also senses the immense magic power inside the dungeon, and she knows that it's coming from the boss, so she thinks the assault team is in danger. We return to Jinwoo, as Kargalgan looks down on his army, but he uses his new Monarch's domain skill, which strengthens his soldiers. Kargalgan orders his minions to attack, but Iron obliterates them with a single blow, and Igris instantly cuts them down. Jinwoo slices through them, and the other hunters can't believe how powerful he is, wondering why he decided to work as their porter. But he notes that the orcs are stronger than his knights, and Kargalgan tells him his soldiers are pathetic, but he reveals that they can resurrect infinitely. So Kargalgan starts attacking with his magic, saying he will keep destroying the Shadow Army until Jinwoo runs out of mana. Jinchul's men finish analyzing the gate, and they reveal that its level is almost S rank. So he orders them to contact the master of the Hunters Guild and prepare to support the assault team in the dungeon. The orcs cut down the Shadow Army, as Jinwoo realizes that he's running out of mana. But he drinks a potion and turns the fallen orcs into his minions, telling Kargalgan he'll be joining them soon. He recognizes Jinwoo's powers, but he suddenly glitches out as he wonders why he keeps hearing a voice, which tells him to kill the humans. But he thinks it doesn't matter, and he orders his elite warriors to join the fight. We cut to Choi, who learns about the incident, and his assistant is worried that there could be a dungeon break. But he notes that they still have time, and he orders her to send their best hunters to the gate. One of the elite warriors fights Iron, who easily overpowers him and cuts his head off. Two of them gang up on Igris, and he struggles to keep up with them, but he manages to kill one of them. He charges at the other one and pushes it back as Tank attacks it from behind. Jinwoo mentions that his generals have the upper hand, and the other hunters think about joining the fight, but Kargalgan curses them with his magic. He uses all of his curse spells on Jinwoo, but it doesn't work because he has a passive skill which makes him immune to debuffs. He summons his mages, as Kargalgan protects himself with his shield, but they combine their powers to form a blue fireball, which breaks through his defenses and causes a massive explosion. Heian watches the battle as she wonders how Jinwoo can control his army, and she talks to the other hunters, who reveal that Ki-hun is still alive. She asks them about the situation, but they can't understand what's happening, and Kargalgan uses his buff spells to turn into a giant. He uses his fire magic to burn everything in the area, but Jinwoo stabs his eye, telling him he's an easy target because he doesn't have guards to protect him. He casts another fire spell to summon explosions, but Jinwoo dodges all of them and he throws his daggers at Kargalgan, but he realizes that it has no effect. So he uses his ruler's hand to wrap chains around him, and he slams him to the ground, as Jinchul witnesses his powers. Heian and the others see him, and he reveals that he's there to support the assault team, but he realizes that Jinwoo has already taken care of everything. She notes that he's an extremely powerful hunter, so she asks Jinchul about him, but he reveals that he doesn't know much. Jinwoo mentions that the fight is over, but Kargalgan refuses to admit defeat, so Jinwoo uses the elite orc warriors to finish him off. The system tells him he has defeated the master of the dungeon, and he turns Kargalgan into one of his minions. The system tells him to name him, but he doesn't remember his name, so he just decides to call him Fang. He notes that it's his first time seeing the elite knight rank, and he thinks the high orcs will serve him well. But Jinchul and the others approach him, and he can't believe he didn't notice them, realizing he was too caught up in the moment. They ask him what happened, but Jinchul tells them to keep everything a secret because the association doesn't want the public to learn about Jinwoo. The surveillance team prepares to escort him out, but Ki-hun thanks him for saving everyone, and he returns Semi's will. At the Hunters Guild, Ki-hun reports to Choi, who realizes that Jinwoo saved the assault team. Choi can't believe how powerful he is, and he asks Ki-hun if Jinwoo is stronger than him. But he wonders if Choi can clear the most difficult A-rank dungeon alone, and he admits that he can't, so he realizes that he's nothing compared to Jinwoo. We see Jinwoo in a cafe, where he meets Yu-jin, asking him if he was able to talk to his father, but he mentions that they have an issue. A crowd gathers outside the association, as they wait for an actor named Min-sung to appear, and we see him waiting in his car, as he goes over his script, thinking it's time for him to make his big debut as a hunter. Beck and Choi arrive, and the media sees them, wondering if they're there to recruit Min-sung. But Beck doesn't even know who he is, and he tells the media he isn't interested in him, while Choi notes that Min-sung is already with the Fiend Guild. Beck asks Choi what happened at the A-rank dungeon, but he explains that it wasn't as bad as the Red Gate incident, where the rookies in the White Tiger Guild lost their lives. They both want to recruit Jinwoo, and they start fighting over him. But the guildmaster of the Fiend Guild named Taegu asks them if they're interested in Min-sung, so they explain that they don't care about him. Jinwoo arrives, as he notes that it's the day of his reevaluation, but he wonders what the media is doing there. We see Gina's classmates watching the news, and they all recognize Min-sung as a playboy, but he was caught at a Diddy party. He appears before the media, and he tells them he has awakened the power of a hunter, so he's preparing for his rank assessment. He reveals that he'll fight for the Fiend Guild, and the media wonders if he'll retire as an actor so that he can work as a full-time hunter. But we learn that he's just putting on an act, and he already did his rank assessment, so he knows he'll be an A-rank hunter. He signed a 2-year contract with the Fiend Guild so that everyone will forget about his scandal, and he plans to return to the entertainment industry with the achievements of an A-rank hunter. He tells everyone he'll risk his life to fight the magic beasts, even if he becomes a low-rank hunter, but he sees his bodyguard arguing with Jinwoo, who mentions he's trying to get inside. The man refuses to let him pass, but Gunyi tells him not to block the road, and he mentions that Jinwoo is his guest. He reminds Mensung that they aren't allowed to hold a press conference there, and he tells Jinwoo to come in. Jinchul blocks the entrance, telling everyone they aren't allowed to enter until Jinwoo finishes his reevaluation, and he tells Mensung not to cause any more trouble. Jinwoo sees Baek and Choi waiting for him, as Gunyi notes that they're looking forward to the result, because they want to know how powerful he is. At the testing area, the examiner asks him what kind of abilities he can use, so he summons one of his knights. But Gunyi knows that he can do more than that, because he read Jinchul's report, so Jinwoo decides to stop holding back, and he summons his entire shadow army. Choi and Baek sense his magic power, and they can't believe how powerful he is, realizing they're nothing compared to him. After that, Jinwoo receives his new license, and he thinks about selling his Sphere of Avarice artifact, so that he can use the money to gear up. Gunyi looks forward to seeing what he can achieve as an S-rank hunter, and Baek and Choi mention that they want to talk to him, but he just ignores them. As he leaves the building, he realizes that the media is waiting for him outside, and everyone's surprised to see him on the news. We learn that the country hasn't seen a new S-rank hunter in 2 years, so everyone flocks to him, as Mensung realizes that his press conference is ruined. We cut to Yujin, as he tells Han that he wasn't able to convince Jinwoo to join them. We learn that he told Yujin he needs to do something alone, and he can't join a guild until he achieves his goal, because it will only hinder his progress. Yujin considers following him, but Han scolds him for his failure, telling him he wasn't able to achieve anything, and he even wants to abandon everything for Jinwoo. But he recalls every moment he spent with him, and he decides to follow him. We return to Jinwoo, as the media continues to bother him, so Baek offers to help him escape. But he suddenly disappears, and Choi realizes that he was able to escape in an instant, but Baek can't believe it, because Jinwoo moved so fast that he couldn't follow his movements. Jinwoo heads to the hunter's auction, where he looks for an artifact with fire resistance. So the shopkeeper shows him a cloak and a ring, and he mentions that it's cheap, but Jinwoo realizes that he can't afford it. So he tries to ask for a discount, but the shopkeeper notes that the price is fixed, and he brags about the glass covering the artifacts, revealing that it's reinforced with magic. He tells Jinwoo he can have the artifacts for free if he destroys it, so he unleashes his powers, but the shopkeeper stops him, telling him he was just joking. Jinwoo mentions that he wants to see the swords they're selling, so the man in charge of weapons assists him, but the shopkeeper realizes that he was able to crack the glass without touching it. The man shows him a knife, and he reveals that it's ridiculously expensive, but Jinwoo notes that it's nothing special. He buys a sword from the system, and he shows it to the man, who mentions that it looks amazing, and he tells Jinwoo he can sell it for 100 million. He can't believe it's worth that much, because he bought it for just 3 million gold, so he realizes that he can make money by selling the items he buys from the system. Meanwhile, at the White Tigers Guild, Baek thinks about Jinwoo, wondering why he keeps getting stronger after his second awakening. Baek notes that it's impossible for a hunter to keep growing after he reawakens, so he believes Jinwoo has the ability to keep improving his stats. Gina looks outside her window, and she's glad that the media is gone, but Jinwoo returns home, and he tells her he'll be away for a week. The doorbell suddenly rings, and he realizes that Yujin is there to pay him a visit. He sees Gina, so he introduces himself as Jinwoo's right hand, but he tells her he'll be working with Yujin for a week. He has no idea what's happening, but he decides to go with it anyway, telling her they have an important job to do. That evening, as Yujin and Gina go to sleep, Jinwoo summons the elite orcs, but he realizes that one of them is missing. He recalls that he sent one of them flying, so he wasn't able to revive him with his shadow extraction, but he thinks it doesn't matter, because the 3 of them should be enough. He orders one of them to protect Gina, and he summons his knights, telling them to patrol the area, because he wants to make sure that it's safe there. The next day, Yu-jin thanks Jinwoo for letting him stay over, and he asks him about his plans. So Jinwoo reveals that he'll train to get stronger, and Yu-jin can't believe he's still grinding, because he's already an S-rank hunter. Yu-jin takes him to his destination, and he returns to the demon's castle with his artifacts, but he receives a quest, which tells him to defeat the demon monarch. He realizes that he'll receive a Shadow Exchange runestone as a reward, and he thinks it's useful, so he's determined to clear the quest. He teleports to the 76th floor, where he sees a giant demon, so he summons Fang, who emerges from the ground. We see that he's as big as the demon, and he uses the Sphere of Avarice to summon a massive fireball, which he uses to blast the creature, killing it in an instant. Jinwoo realizes that Fang is OP, and he decides to let him keep the sphere since it strengthens his magic. We cut to Han, as his wife tells him that Yu-jin ran away from home, but he thinks it doesn't matter because Yu-jin is already too old to stay with them. But he suddenly feels sleepy and he collapses, so she takes him to the hospital, where the doctor reveals that he has the eternal sleep disease. He wonders how he got it, so the doctor explains that it's because of prolonged exposure to magic, telling him he's prone to the disease because his resistance is low. The doctor wonders if there's a hunter in their family, so he mentions that his son is a hunter. But he thinks he isn't fit to survive, because the world is filled with magic and he has no magic resistance. We see Jinwoo on the 80th floor as he notes that he divided his army into 3 teams so that they can find the entry permit to the next floor faster. But he sees that he's running out of mana, and he realizes that his orcs have been defeated. So he decides to investigate it, and he notes that the demons are attacking the weaker teams first, so he realizes that they have the intelligence to measure strength. Tank's team is attacked by a group of demon knights, but Jinwoo suddenly appears, and he cuts them into pieces. So their leader panics, as Jinwoo realizes that magic beasts can also feel fear. He grabs onto the leader, and he prepares to finish her off, but she suddenly begs for her life, so he decides to let her go. He walks away, but she tries to stab him, so Fang stops her, and Jinwoo realizes that she just tried to kill him, so she begs him to spare her life again. He asks her if she knows where he can find the entry permit, so she reveals that her family is keeping it, and she promises to give it to him if he doesn't kill her. She reveals that she also knows where to find the upper-level permits, but he wonders if he can trust her, and she tells him she isn't lying, so he decides to spare her life. He asks her to tell him about her background, so she reveals that her name is Essel, and she's the eldest daughter of the Radiru family. But he wonders if she hears voices in her head, which tells her to kill humans, so she reveals that she keeps hearing a command, but it's just telling her to protect their space. She reveals that she's from the demon realm, but she and her people were suddenly transported there, and he asks her what happened before she was sent there. But she suddenly glitches out, as she reveals that her people were preparing for a war, because they encountered a formidable enemy, which was so powerful that the demons had to unite to fight him. But the system stops her from talking, and she collapses, as Jinwoo realizes that he can't ask any more questions about it. We cut to a remote island in Japan, as a winged ant attacks it, killing hundreds of people. Everyone in the association talks about the incident, as Jinchul reveals that over 100 hunters fought the ant, but 6 of them died, and it took an A-rank hunter to defeat it. Gunyi notes that the island is 120 kilometers away from Jeju Island, and if the ants continue to improve their flying ability, they'll eventually reach the southern tip of Korea. So he decides to ask for Japan's support and start another raid mission on Jeju Island. We return to Jinwoo, as Essel leads him to the Radiru family's castle, but her father is afraid of him because he can see his shadow army. He thinks Jinwoo is trying to deceive her, so he orders his soldiers to surround him, but Jinwoo promises not to harm her if they give him the permit. Her father knows that he's no match for him, so he gives him the item he's looking for. But Jinwoo mentions that he wants Essel to serve as his guide because she knows where to find the other permits. Her father becomes upset hearing this, but Jinwoo promises to protect her, so he allows her to join him. After that, we see Jinwoo as he's about to reach the 90th floor, and he notes that Igris and Tank have ranked up. But Essel warns him that the demons above the 90th floor are high-ranking nobles, and the enemies he's encountered so far are nothing compared to them. She suggests negotiating with them to get the permits, but he thinks her plan will never work, and he promises to make Radiru the #1 noble family in the castle. She wonders why he spared her family, so he explains that it's because he likes her, so she becomes flustered. But we learn that he just likes simple-minded people, since they're easy to get along with. He tells her to go back, because he's worried that something might happen to her, but she wants to follow him until the end, so he decides to let her stick around. They start clearing the higher floors, as Jinwoo realizes that the demons are stronger than the ones he fought, but he still manages to defeat them. We cut to Choi, as he tells Haein that they're part of the Jeju Island raid mission, and he mentions that all S-rank hunters have been called to participate. He notes that the winged ants are also a danger to Japan, so they'll be sending hunters to join them, and she wonders when the mission will begin. So he tells her he doesn't know yet, but he mentions that hunters from the largest guilds in Japan are making their way to Korea. Jinwoo reaches the 100th floor, where he sees a wyvern covered with lightning, and he realizes that the demon monarch Baran is riding it. He notes that his aura is overwhelming, so he isn't sure if he can defeat him, and Essel freaks out as she senses his bloodlust. The wyvern takes to the sky, as Baran summons his minions, and they surround Jinwoo, but his shadow army protects him. His forces clash with the demons, and Fang unleashes a devastating fire spell, as Essel realizes that Jinwoo is extremely powerful, but she still isn't sure if he can defeat Baran. He unleashes blasts of lightning, which obliterate the shadow army, and Essel is about to be hit, but Jinwoo saves her just in time. He revives his minions, but he knows that he'll run out of mana if he doesn't stop Baran, so he uses his stealth and dash skills to get closer. He tries to attack the wyvern, but Baran blocks his attack and sends him crashing to the ground. He tries to blast Jinwoo with his lightning breath, but he runs away, and he orders Fang to stop it with his flames, while Igris slices off the wyvern's head. So Baran falls to the ground, and Jinwoo prepares to take him on. The association meets the guildmaster of the Blade Guild named Goto, as his translator Hanakawa mentions that she'll help him talk to them. Gunyi knows that the Blade Guild is an extremely large guild in Japan, which has 11 S-rank hunters, and he notes that Goto is a competent leader. Hanakawa thanks Gunyi for accepting their proposal to work together, and she reveals that they've analyzed the winged ants. She reveals that they grow rapidly, but they can't live for more than a year, so when their queen is defeated, they'll quickly go extinct. She adds that they're attracted to high magic power, and she reveals that Goto came up with a battle plan, where he'll fight the ants with the other S-rank hunters from his guild. He plans to lure out the ants so that the Korean hunters can eliminate their queen, and Jinchul worries he could be overwhelmed. But he thinks it shouldn't be a problem, since they'll just be acting as bait. He's convinced that it's the best tactic they can use against the ants, and Gunyi thinks it might work, so he decides to go with it. The Shadow Army continues to fight the demons, but Jinwoo realizes that he's running out of mana. Fang blasts Baran, but he unleashes his lightning breath, which overpowers Fang's spell. Jinwoo attacks him from behind, but he still manages to defend himself. He grabs onto Jinwoo, and Baran prepares to finish him off, but his minions defend him, and he stabs Baran's arm. They work together to restrain him, but he unleashes his powers, and it creates a blast of lightning, which pushes Jinwoo back. He realizes that he's out of mana, so he fights Baran head-on, and they fiercely exchange blows. But Baran uses his lightning breath, which disarms Jinwoo, and he prepares to deal the finishing blow. But Jinwoo stops him with his bare hands, so Baran prepares to blast him with his breath. Jinwoo realizes he's wide open, but Essel throws her weapon at Baran, which distracts him, and Jinwoo sees an opening, so he uses his ruler's hand to grab onto Baran's arms. He manages to rip them off, but Baran prepares to blast him, so he punches him with everything he has. Baran's head gets blown off, and his powers launch to the sky, creating a massive explosion. The system tells Jinwoo he has cleared the quest, and Baran's demons disappear. Essel worries about him, but he tells her she can report to her father, and tell him that they're now the top noble family. He receives the blood of the demon monarch, which he needs to craft the elixir of life, but he realizes that the success rate for crafting it depends on his intelligence level. So he becomes nervous, but he decides to go for it anyway, and he successfully crafts 6 of them. The description mentions that it can cure all diseases, but he wonders if it can save his mother. Iron gives him the wyvern's remains, and he turns it into one of his minions, so the system asks him to name it. He decides to call it Kaisel, and Essel is excited to ride it, telling him they should hold a party when they return. but he completely ignores her, and he realizes that he has received the Shadow Exchange runestone as a reward. So he crushes it, and he learns the Shadow Exchange skill, which allows him to switch places with any one of his minions. He decides to try it, so he bids Essel farewell, and she tries to tell him how she feels, but she realizes that one of his knights has taken his place. We see Jinwoo in the town, as he realizes that he was able to switch places with one of the knights he sent on patrol, but he needs to wait 3 hours before he can use his skill again. So he takes to the sky, and he summons Kaisel, who takes him back to his house. Meanwhile at the association, Jinchul and Gunyi discuss the plan to eliminate the ants. But they aren't sure if it will work, so they have a retreat plan in case they run into trouble. We see Beck drinking with his friend Byungdu, who's a retired S-rank healer, and he reminds Beck about the moment the ants killed their friend Yunsuk. But Beck explains that he needs to join the raid, because the ants are a threat to the entire country. Byungdu thinks Beck is there to invite him, so he mentions that he isn't interested, but Beck reveals that he's just there to say goodbye, because he might not make it back from the mission. Byungdu reveals that he plans to take the civil service exam because he wants to live a normal life, but he isn't sure if he'll pass because he's only good at history. He thinks battles should become a thing of the past, and Beck agrees with him, but he notes that the hunter's job is to fight the magic beasts. We see Jinwoo at the hospital, and he looks at his mother's scar as he recalls that he was the reason why she was burned by boiling water. He prepares to give her the elixir, and he's worried that it won't work on her, but he recalls how he's witnessed countless miracles because of the system. So he decides to trust it, and he gives her the elixir. He's surprised as a light suddenly surrounds her body, and it causes her scar to disappear, but he wonders if she'll ever wake up, because he's been fighting just to keep her alive. There's suddenly a gust of wind, and as he opens his eyes, he realizes that she has already recovered. She asks him how long she has been sleeping, so he reveals that she's been in a coma for 4 years, but he assures her that Gina is doing well. She tells him he has matured, but she knows that he's been pushing himself because he's covered in wounds. So he starts crying as he tells her he's okay, and she thanks him for looking after her. The next day, the doctors can't believe that Jinwoo's mother completely recovered, and Gina is overjoyed to see her, as Jinwoo notes that he has finally received the real reward thanks to his efforts. We cut to Gunyi, as he tells everyone that the winged ants from Jeju Island are a threat to the country, so the association has decided to start another raid mission, which will involve S-rank hunters from Japan and Korea. He notes that the lower rank hunters will support the operation by handling maritime surveillance and homeland defense, and he tells everyone that they're determined to succeed. Byungdu watches his speech, and he recalls the moment he spent with Yunsuk before the first raid on Jeju Island. He told Byungdu that they're the only ones who can stop the ants from taking over the country, and Beck mentions that he'll crush them with his bare hands. But Yunsuk notes that he's worried about Beck because of his personality and abilities, and he tells Byungdu that they're the only ones who can help him if he's in danger. We return to Jinwoo, as he realizes that Gina made a mess while he was away, and their mother tells them they should clean the place together. So they get to work, as Jinwoo notes that it's the moment he longed for, but he's worried that something might happen to them because he may have crossed a line as a hunter. His mother asks him if he was able to talk to his father, and she mentions that he was a firefighter before he became a hunter, telling Jinwoo he's just like him. Gina mentions that she's trying to become a doctor, but he suddenly receives a call from the association. We cut to Gunyi, as Jinchul tells him that America's S-rank national authority hunter named Thomas Andre has entered the country. Gunyi thinks it's unusual, because he doesn't usually intervene in a foreign country's operations, so Gunyi believes he's up to something. After that, Jinwoo has a meeting with Gunyi, who invites him to join the raid, which will begin in 4 days. He thinks it's the perfect chance to level up, but he thinks about his family, and he suddenly feels a powerful magic power, so Gunyi reveals that the S-rank hunters are training at the gym. We see Beck fighting a hunter from the famed guild named Ma, who manages to take him down, and Jinwoo notes that he appears to be struggling. But Choi reveals that he's holding back, and Jinwoo wonders why he isn't using his full strength. So Choi notes that he doesn't want to show anyone his true power, because he would turn into a monster if he goes all out. The S-rank hunters from Japan join them, and they immediately notice Jinwoo. Goyo thinks he's an assassin, but Hanakawa reveals that he's a mage, and Heian also sees him, as she realizes that the atmosphere changed because of him. Ma continues to fight Beck, but Hanakawa mentions that she's disappointed because they're nothing compared to Goto. The guildmaster of the Knights Guild named Jansu suddenly confronts her because he knows that she's mocking them. The other hunters gather around them, telling them to calm down, but Goto suggests holding a friendly match where only S-rank hunters can participate. Gunyi thinks it's a great idea, but he mentions that only combat hunters should participate because they can't judge mages based on their strength. Beck suggests the rules, saying it won't be a one-on-one match, and Goto agrees with him. So the combat hunters prepare for battle, as everyone wonders how Korea's elite fighters hold up against the S-rank hunters of Japan. Jinwoo watches them as they prepare to fight, and he realizes Goto isn't participating, but he looks forward to seeing what everyone can do. Ma turns into a giant, and he approaches a hunter named Kenzo, who unleashes his powers. Ma wants to see who's stronger, so he fights him head-on, while Taiga struggles against another hunter named Minoru, because he can't keep up with his speed. Taiga knows he can't defeat Minoru if he's too close, so he throws his magic arrows, as he reveals that his specialty is long-range combat. Minoru manages to dodge them, but an arrow almost hits Kenzo, who gets distracted. Choi knows that the arena is reinforced with top-tier magic gems, but Gunyi isn't sure if it can withstand the S-rank hunter's attacks. Beck charges at a man named Kumamoto, as he notes that he's fighting against elite hunters, so he decides to stop holding back. Kumamoto panics as he dodges Beck's attack, so he realizes that Kumamoto isn't used to fighting. He thinks Goto is testing his subordinates because he wants to know if they're ready to fight the ants. Beck decides to use his transformation, and Kumamoto thinks he's no match for him, so he runs away, but Beck catches up to him. Kenzo defeats Ma, who mentions that it's the first time he's been smashed to the ground, and Minoru is able to eliminate Taiga from the match. Beck continues to attack Kumamoto, who keeps running away. But Minoru and Kenzo join the fight, and Beck thinks they decided to gang up on him because they think he's weaker than Heian. We see Heian fighting a hunter named Kana, who struggles to keep up with her movements. Heian manages to hit her, and she easily eliminates her. She decides to help Beck, but she senses Kumamoto behind her, and she instantly hits him repeatedly. The other hunters are impressed by her move, but we learn it was just a reflex, and she worries she overdid it. But he suddenly goes berserk, and Goto notes that he might hurt someone, but he decides not to stop the fight. Kumamoto starts attacking relentlessly, and Heian manages to defend herself, but he smashes the ground and launches a surprise attack. The other hunters think she's in trouble, but Jinwoo gets in the way, telling him the fight has gone beyond a sparring match. Kumamoto tries to grab him, but Jinwoo easily takes him down, and everyone can't believe he was able to stop Kumamoto when he was berserk. But Jinwoo tells Heian to admit defeat because Beck has been eliminated, so she can't win even if she goes all out. Hanakawa tells Jinwoo that Goto wants to fight him, and he thinks it's the perfect chance to see what the top hunter of Japan can do. She tells Goto that Jinwoo accepted his request, but she mentions that he has a condition, saying he'll only fight Goto if he goes all out. We see Jui watching the news, and she realizes that everyone's preparing for the raid on Jeju Island. We learn that it's her day off, but she calls the association and tells them she wants to learn about the sentry team of the raid mission. We return to Jinwoo as he prepares to fight Goto, and everyone looks forward to seeing what he can do. He mentions that it's time to start, and Goto instantly strikes first, but he dodges the attack, and Goto can't believe how fast he is when he's supposed to be a mage. He uses his skill to attack Jinwoo with incredible speed, and the others struggle to even follow his movements, so they're impressed that Jinwoo can avoid his attacks. He becomes angry because he can't land a hit, so he decides to use his full power and goes straight for his head. But Jinwoo stops his attack, and Goto wonders why he didn't grab his wrist, so he reveals that he doesn't want to end the fight yet because he still isn't satisfied. They both exude their auras, and everyone thinks they'll hurt each other if they clash. So they decide to stop the fight, as Beck notes that no one can take responsibility if something goes wrong. Jinwoo realizes that he got carried away, but we learn that his goal was to assess everyone's strengths, and he placed his soldiers in their shadows. After that, Goto talks to a hunter named Reiji, and he mentions that Jinwoo is extremely skilled. So Reiji looks into him, but he notes that Jinwoo isn't on the raid mission's hunter list. Beck and Choi also see the list, and they realize that 15 S-rank hunters will participate, so they think they will finally be able to clear Jeju Island. Jinwoo returns home, and his mother welcomes him back, telling him dinner is ready, and we learn that he decided not to participate in the raid because he wanted to spend more time with his mother. Meanwhile, at Jeju Island, we see the ants eating each other because they no longer have food in the area. The queen notes that they need to leave the island or they'll go extinct, and she thinks her almighty child will be able to lead them. A giant ant emerges from its egg, and its body turns black as the queen recognizes him as their king. We see everyone watching the news as the reporter mentions that the ants are evolving and they now have wings on their backs, so the association plans to deal with them. All hunters are encouraged to join the sentry team because the ants might attack the mainland, and we learn that Songchi and Jui have joined the team. The next day, we see boats approaching Jeju Island. Baek is surprised to see Byungyu, who reveals that he decided to join them because he thinks Baek will die if he's not there. The Japanese hunters are already on the island, and we see a cameraman with the Korean S-rank hunters. He reveals that he'll broadcast the battle to the public and tells everyone not to worry because he's an A-rank hunter and he's used to filming in dangerous zones. They know that if their mission fails, the ants might destroy their country, so they're determined to do everything it takes to succeed. Gunyi tells everyone to begin the operation, so the members of the decoy unit release their magic power. The ants come out of their nest, but the Korean hunters realize there are some headed for their ship, so Choi shoots them down, and he tells the others it's time to land. Gunyi tells them the Japanese hunters can stall the ants for an hour, so they need to defeat the queen within that time. Reiji orders his subordinates to activate the interference wave, which prevents the ants from receiving the queen's distress signals. The hunters of the Blade Guild start fighting the ants, and Choi seals the exit with his flame prison, but there are countless tunnels around them, and they don't know which one leads to the queen, so Choi blasts all of them and tells everyone he found the deepest tunnel. We see Jinwoo as he completes his daily quests, and he thinks about the S-rank hunters who joined the mission. He knows that they're all capable, so he believes they can complete the mission without him. We return to the Korean hunters as they explore the cave, and they see the egg chamber, so they think the queen must be nearby. But they see the giant egg, so Byungyu freaks out, but Baek tells him not to think about it and reminds him about their mission to eliminate the queen. But we learn that he's also worried, wondering what kind of monster came out of the egg. We see that Kenzo is injured, and the healer Shimizu tells him she can heal him, but he needs to do something for her in return. They see another wave of ants approaching, and they prepare to fight, but her head suddenly gets cut off as the Ant King suddenly appears. Kenzo tells his companion Fushima to be careful, and he tries to punch the ant, but it instantly blows his head off. Fushima follows its movements and tries to attack it, but he ends up losing his head as well. We return to the ant's nest, where we see the Korean hunters fighting white ants. Ma notes that each of them has S-rank strength, but their movements are predictable, and he blocks their attacks, while Haein finishes them off. She mentions that they're tough, but Byungyu tells everyone not to worry because he will support them. They realize that the enemies are getting stronger, but they think they still have a long way to go before they reach the queen. Taegu wonders if they're headed in the right direction, and Choi thinks Baek can use his abilities to find the queen, so he uses his beast eyes to search the cave. He sees the queen and tells everyone where to find her, but he notes that she's surrounded by her guards. He mentions that many of them are S-rank, and he isn't sure how powerful the queen is, but he thinks they can defeat her if they work together. We see two Japanese hunters looking for Kenzo's team because they suddenly lost contact with them. One of them sees Fushima's glasses, and his companion suddenly throws up as he notes that he smells something extremely dangerous. He realizes that they can't escape, so he creates a massive wall of ice around them, but the Ant King destroys it and kills them in an instant. We cut to Kana and Kumamoto as they realize that they've already lost contact with two teams. Kumamoto wonders what happened to them, but Kana tells him they don't have time to think about it because a swarm of ants is approaching. The Korean hunters reach the queen, and Ma tells everyone to stick to their plan as he turns into a giant and protects them with his shield. Choi summons a fire dragon, which burns everything in its path, but the white ants survive. Baek realizes that he needs to go all out, so he unleashes his full power and crushes the ants with his bare hands. The cameraman's boss orders him to get a better shot, so he tries to get closer, but Byungyu stops him, telling him it's too dangerous. The ants try to break Ma's defenses, but he blows them away, and Taega shoots them with his arrows. Everyone watches the events unfold, and they root for the hunters to win, because they know that the ants are a threat to their country. The reporter notes that the queen's guards have been wiped out, so she now stands alone. Ma blocks her attack, and Tega shoots her with his arrows, while Beck slashes her with his claws. But she endures all of their attacks, and she releases a poison gas, which hits Beck and Ma. But Byung-gu heals them, telling them they won't die as long as he's around. She tries to attack him, but Ma shields him, and Choi unleashes a powerful fire blast. But it has no effect, and she lets out a scream, as Beck wonders what it means. She tries to retreat, but Beck and Ma hold her in place, and Haein charges in, while Byung-gu buffs her with his spell. She attacks the queen's legs with incredible speed, and she jumps into the air, where she unleashes her sword of light. She slashes the queen's head, and she manages to cut it off, so everyone celebrates, thinking they were able to win. But Beck thinks about the queen's final scream, and Reiji tells everyone they have a problem, because the interference wave didn't work, so the ants are returning to the nest. Choi notices that his flame prison has been destroyed, and the Korean hunters realize that the queen called for help before she died. Haein knows that the ants aren't strong enough to destroy the flame prison, and everyone senses an overpowering presence, as the Ant King appears before them. She suddenly starts to feel sick, because she can sense that they're nothing compared to it, and Ma prepares to attack, but he's stunned by its killing intent, and it walks right past him, and everyone watches it as it eats the queen. But it suddenly lets out a piercing scream, and sends Haein flying with a single blow. Ma realizes he's next, so he tries to fight back, but it shatters his shield, and cuts off his arms. Beck attacks it head-on, but it defeats him in an instant, so Choi prepares to use his magic, but it takes him out with a single blow. Tega fires his arrow, but the ant catches it, and blows him away. It prepares to finish him off, but Ma saves him, telling the Ant King they can't lose, because they have an incredible healer. We learn that Byung-gu is healing the others while he's invisible, and Ma tries to attack the ant, but it grabs onto him, and Hulk smashes him into the ground. Byung-gu realizes that it can see him, and it suddenly stabs right through him. He tells Beck to run, but the Ant King eats him, so Beck becomes enraged, and he charges in. But it just grabs him, and it repeats Byung-gu's last words. He realizes that it has learned how to talk, because it ate Byung-gu's head, and it notes that its queen is dead, so it wants to avenge her by killing their king. It senses a powerful hunter outside, and decides to go there, as Beck realizes that it was talking about Godo. But he notes that they need to escape, because the ants have returned to their nest. We cut to Godo, as his companion Ishida tells him they lost contact with two of the other teams, so he decides to look for them. He finds the remains of his guildmates, and reports the incident to their chairman Matsumoto. Godo thinks they died because they're weak, but Matsumoto notes that it shouldn't be a problem, because Godo doesn't need them to complete the mission. He tells Matsumoto that the ants have returned to their nest, and he thinks the Korean hunters won't survive, because they aren't strong enough to defeat the ants. So Matsumoto orders him to abandon them, and work with the second assault team to conquer Jeju Island. We learn that his plan is to weaken Korea, by wiping out their S-rank hunters, and make Japan look powerful by conquering the island. Godo orders everyone to retreat, and follow Matsumoto's plan, but the Ant King suddenly attacks them. Godo blocks its attack, but it still manages to kill Ishida, and he tells Minoru to meet the second assault team, because he'll only get in the way if he stays there. It asks Godo if he's the king, and he says that he is, but he's surprised by its power, and it defeats him before he can do anything. We see a swarm of ants approaching the Korean hunters, and Choi tries to blast them, but he mentions that he has already reached his limit. Beck notes that they're in no condition to fight, so they'll be slaughtered once the ants reach them. But Jinwoo's soldiers suddenly appear, protecting them from the ants, and he prepares to join the fight.
Exchange.
Everyone wonders what's happening, and the ants charge in, but Jinwoo's generals suddenly appear, destroying them in an instant. Jinwoo makes his entrance, and he joins his minions, as the hunters wonder how he was able to get there. We cut to Jui, as she realizes that the broadcast has been interrupted, and everyone in the media starts to panic. They're worried that the S-rank hunters have been wiped out, so the director tries to contact the cameraman. But we see that he has no signal, and he's trying to get his camera to work. Jinwoo's generals start slaughtering the ants, while he approaches the hunters, and Beck starts asking him questions, but he tells little bro he'll explain everything later. He takes out a healing potion, But he realizes that he can't give it to them, so he needs to pour it into their mouths, and they can't believe they've completely recovered. Jinwoo tries to heal Heian, but it doesn't work, as the system notes that her HP is too low. He realizes that her aura is getting weaker, so he tells the others they need to escape and get her help, but they see another wave of monsters approaching. Everyone in the association wonders what's happening because there's a signal interference on the island and they can't contact Japan's team. So Gunyi orders them to restore communication and have the medical team on standby. He mentions that he hates himself because he's worried about the hunters, but he knows that he can't do anything to help them. Reiji reports to Matsumoto, telling him Goto's survival signal is off, so they realize he's dead. Matsumoto can't believe they lost him, and he orders Reiji to check on the other hunters because they can't afford to lose them. We return to Jinwoo, as he notes that the ants are no match for his generals, but his knights are struggling, so he thinks about improving their combat power. He tells everyone they're in danger, but he promises to help them escape, telling them to follow Fang, while his minions fight the ants. They decide to go with his plan, but he asks them not to tell anyone what they're about to see, and he prepares to turn the ants into his minions. But the monsters suddenly stop attacking, and everyone senses a powerful presence as the Ant King makes his entrance. Beck realizes that it was able to kill Goto, but it thinks Goto was too weak to have been the king. Jinwoo steps forward as he unleashes his aura, and it asks him if he's the king, but he's just surprised that an ant can talk. It realizes that he also has a powerful presence, and it tries to intimidate him with a terrifying scream, but he maintains his composure. The camera starts working again, and the director realizes that Jinwoo is about to fight, so he tells his subordinates to go live. Everyone sees Jinwoo, and they can't believe he's fighting the ants, realizing the fate of the battle rests on his shoulders. Gunyi is overjoyed to see him, and Jinchul wonders how he got there, but Gunyi thinks it doesn't matter, saying they should just believe in him. The Ant King strikes first, and the impact creates a powerful shockwave, so the other hunters think he's dead. But they realize he's still standing, and he uses his ruler's hand to slam the ant to the ground. He delivers a devastating blow, and everyone can't believe how strong he is, when he's supposed to be a mage. He realizes that the ant is tough, and they start to exchange blows, as the cameraman struggles to stand his ground. Jinwoo dodges the ant's attack, and he counters with a punch that sends the ant flying. But it charges back in, and he stops it with a solid blow to the head, but it attacks him with its tongue, which spreads poison throughout his body. The ant notes that he can't move because of the poison, so it thinks the fight is over and prepares to finish him off. We cut to Matsumoto, as he learns that 7 out of the 10 hunters he sent are dead, and he becomes angry hearing this, telling Reiji he's useless. He reveals that the monster who killed Goto is near the crater, and Matsumoto wonders what it's doing there, so Reiji notes that it must have returned to the nest because it's injured. Matsumoto believes it will wipe out the Korean hunters in the nest, and thinks they should kill it before it recovers, so he orders the remaining hunters to join the second assault team and prepare to attack again. Kana is ordered to wait for the helicopter, and she tells her companions about the plan, but Minoru thinks they don't stand a chance against the Ant King. She tells him to get himself together, but he's convinced that they're no match for it, telling her they'll die if they don't escape. So she calls him a disgrace, telling him they have no choice but to follow orders. We return to Jinwoo, as he stops the Ant King's attack and sends it flying with another punch. He realizes that the poison is its secret weapon, but we learn he was able to recover from it, thanks to his health and longevity skill. But he's worried that Heian might die, so he thinks about ending the fight. He goes on the offensive, but the ant dodges his attack and analyzes the situation, realizing the only way to defeat him is to surpass his speed. So it transforms into its ultimate form, while he equips his Demon Monarch daggers, which increase his attack power. He charges in, and they attack each other with incredible speed, but he struggles to keep up with the ant's movements, and it manages to push him back. It summons ice shards to attack him, and he manages to dodge them, but the ceiling collapses, and they continue their fight in midair. But the ant realizes that their speed is equal, and Jinwoo is still getting faster. They continue to clash, and they start fighting with blinding speed, as everyone struggles to keep up with their movements. Jinwoo's speed continues to improve, and the Ant King manages to block his attacks, but he throws his daggers at it and creates an opening. He rushes forward and delivers a devastating barrage, but it suddenly takes him down and prepares to finish him off. But at that moment, he learns a new skill called mutilation, which instantly cuts the ant into pieces. He tries to end the fight, but it summons ice to block his attack and regenerates itself. It realizes it's no match for him, so it tries to retreat, but he catches up to it. It orders the other ants to attack, but Jinwoo summons his shadow army, and his minions take down the ants, as Fang obliterates them with a fire blast. The Ant King can't believe it, because it was created to become the apex predator, but it's no match for Jinwoo. It tries to fly away, but he uses his ruler's hand to smash it to the ground, and he finishes it off with his mutilation skill. The system tells him he has defeated it, and the other ants run away, so everyone realizes the fight is over. But he checks on Heian and realizes she's in terrible condition. Choi tells him their helicopter is parked outside, but Jinwoo thinks she won't make it. He decides to use the elixir of life as a last resort, but it doesn't work because it can only cure diseases. He wonders how he can save her, because his potions don't work and his shadow exchange skill is still on cooldown, but he refuses to let her die. He tells the cameraman to stop the broadcast, as Fang carries her away and puts her beside Byunggyu's body. So Baek asks Jinwoo about his plan, but he doesn't have time to explain and turns Byungyu into one of his minions. We see Reiji with the Japanese hunters, as he tells them to stick to the plan, but Minoru doesn't want to return to the island because he knows they're no match for the king. But Reiji notes that it's already dead, telling him a Japanese hunter must have killed it. We return to Jinwoo, as the other hunters realize he has the power to control the dead, and Byungyu uses his healing spell to save Heian. Jinwoo reveals that he didn't order him to do it, and he knows that Byungyu was a good man. But Baek knows that Byungyu doesn't like fighting, so he begs Jinwoo not to send him to battle. He tells Baek not to worry, because he'll let Byungyu rest in peace, and he cancels his shadow extraction. So Byungyu starts to disappear, but he smiles at Baek, who thanks Jinwoo for allowing his spirit to pass on. We cut to Matsumoto, who can't believe the Korean hunters are still alive, and he wonders how Jinwoo was able to join them, because he wasn't supposed to be in the raid. Reiji tells him he appeared out of nowhere, and asks him if they should proceed with the plan, because their country will struggle if they lose more S-rank hunters. So Matsumoto orders everyone to retreat, but he loses it, since the operation was a complete disaster. We see the ants flying away from the island, and the sentry team tries to fight them off, realizing they're out of control, because they lost their leader. The S-rank hunters rush to their helicopter, but they realize that the ants are flying toward the mainland, thinking they won't be able to escape if they don't hurry. Choi tells everyone it's time to leave, but a mage asks him why Jinwoo isn't with them. So Choi explains that he'll stay behind to eliminate the ants, but they can't help him because they need to take Heian to the medical team. We see Fang burning the ants' eggs, and Jinwoo uses the longsword of the demon monarch to summon lightning, which destroy the ants in an instant. He realizes that its destructive power is amazing, but he orders his minions to do the rest, and they exterminate the ants in the nest, allowing him to reach level 100. He approaches the Ant King's remains, and uses his shadow extraction, but he's suddenly surrounded by darkness, so he thinks his spell failed. But the shadow of the Ant King suddenly appears, and he prepares to turn the other ants into his minions, but it suddenly calls him the king. He's surprised that it can talk, because his other minions never speak to him, and the system tells him to give it a name, as he notes that it's his first time seeing a general rank minion. He thinks it can speak because of its rank, and he notes that he was the one who killed it, but it explains that it isn't dead, because it was reborn thanks to his powers. It promises to be loyal to him, and tells him to give it a name, so he decides to call it Beru, and adds the other ants into his shadow army. We see a swarm of ants approaching his city, and the sentry team fights to protect everyone, as Beru tells Jinwoo that over 4,000 ants are running rampant, so he orders him to wipe them out, and it flies off to deal with them. Songchi works with the other hunters to defeat an ant, and he tells them they need to work together to kill the monsters one by one. But two ants attack him at the same time, so Jui realizes he's in trouble, but they suddenly get cut into pieces. Everyone sees a light destroying everything in its path, and we see that it's Beru, but the other hunters don't know what it is, because it's moving too fast. We see the S-rank hunters in the helicopter, as the mage struggles to maintain his barrier, which is protecting them from the ants. Taegu and Choi try to shoot them down, but they still break through the barrier, so everyone thinks they're doomed. But a blast of lightning suddenly kills the ants, and Kaisel appears with Jinwoo, so they realize he saved them once again. The hunters end up wiping out the ants, and Choi's group returns safely, so everyone celebrates. Haein is transferred to the medical team, while Gunyi notes that they suffered casualties during the battle, but they were finally able to conquer Jeju Island. We see a swarm of ants approaching the Chinese Navy, but their national-level hunter unleashes his power and slashes them with his swords. His attack creates an enormous explosion, which instantly wipes them out, as he notes that they weren't even a challenge. A few days later, we see everyone gathering at a monument, where they pay their respects to the people killed by the ants. Jinwoo leaves a flower for Byungyu, and we learn that everyone considers him a hero because he defeated the Ant King. But there are people who blame him for the casualties, since he could have prevented countless deaths if he wasn't so busy aura farming. But Beck tells him to raise his head, reminding him that he was the one who put an end to the tragedy. Gunyi thanks Jinwoo for supporting the raid mission, but he blames himself for Byungyu's death, so Gunyi notes that everyone would have died if he hadn't intervened. He promises to repay him in the future, and tells him the world already knows about his powers, so he won't be able to keep a low profile. Gunyi wonders what he plans to do next, so he mentions that he wants to start his own guild. We see the Knights Guild in the Ants' Nest, and we learn that they were ordered to clean it up. But they suddenly see a mysterious man, and they prepare to take him on, telling him he isn't supposed to be there. But his companion snaps his finger, causing them to fall asleep, and the men note that they can sense Ilhwan's power in the area. They wonder why he's helping humans, but one of them opens a portal, as he notes that they should leave because their job is done. The other one realizes there's no reason to interfere, and he also leaves through a portal, but we see Ilhwan watching them from above. Jinwoo is stuck in traffic, and he tells Yujin they can start a guild together, because they received Gunyi's approval. Yujin looks forward to it, and Songyi wants to join as well. He receives another call from Gunyi, who reveals that a B-rank gate is causing the traffic jam, so he decides to take care of it. We see a man waiting for the hunters to arrive, but he realizes they're stuck in traffic, and Jinwoo appears, telling him he will handle it. He enters alone, but the gate suddenly turns red, and he realizes it will take a while to clear it. He notices he's surrounded, so he summons his shadow army, and orders them to clear the dungeon as fast as possible. We see that Haein has recovered, but she realizes that she was helpless when they were against the king, so she thinks she still isn't strong enough, but she's determined to improve, so that she can catch up and stand beside Jinwoo. As the shadow army clashes with the monsters in the dungeon, Jinwoo thinks about how the dungeon is a brutal world, because hunters can become prey and die at any moment. He thinks that even though they may have different goals, all they can do as hunters is continue to hunt. The shadow army wipes out the monsters, and they all bow to Jinwoo, as he starts looking forward to his next hunt. But that's where this video ends. Remember to like and subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.